Well, Jimmy Kimmel started crying. And the best part about his opening monologue where he is crying, like he like welled up and nearly cried. He choked up. Okay, so I don't know if there were any tears. But he's like, this is a terrible night for the poor, for immigrants, for women, and for our allies in Ukraine. It was when he got to Ukraine, he struggled to speak. Like he was so sad for the people of Ukraine he's never met and doesn't even know where they are on a map. But sure. So now, Stephen Smith is distancing himself, Fox News says. We'll talk about that. And just generally, all the late night hosts are having this insane meltdown where they don't seem to understand what democracy is. Yeah, when Trump wins the popular vote and the popular mandate, you can't say democracy is dead because it actually won. And then we got a bunch of news, but I know Donald Trump has chosen his chief of staff, which is big news. PA has been called for McCormick, so this is another flip for the Republicans. And then we have this article from Wired, The Manosphere Won, where they blame Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, and me for partly contributing to Donald Trump's major victory. I don't think any of us are considered manosphere, but no one's ever accused these people of being smart. Before we get started, my friends, head over to preservegold.com/TimPool and consider gold, right? The other day I was saying that we had an election coming up, but right now, the future is looking bright. But even so, it's always great to protect your retirement accounts and your 401ks. So our friends over at Preserve Gold have an exclusive offer for my viewers right now, where you can get up to $15,000 in free gold and silver with a qualified purchase, as well as a free guide. So text TIM to 50505 to learn more. Preserve Gold has hundreds of 5-star reviews and millions of dollars in trusted transactions with happy clients. My friends, head over and check out Preserve Gold. It's always a good idea to protect your future. And as much as everything is actually much less tense, take this stuff seriously and check them out. They're sponsoring the show. We're big fans. Appreciate it. Also, castbrew.com. We had to do it. You've got promo code, all caps, VICTORY, and you will get 30% off everything. So go to castbrew.com. Try any one of our coffees. Load up. 30% off. I said, let's just go nuts. Victory is the promo code, and now's your chance. And that's good until the end of tomorrow. And then, of course, become a member at timcast.com. Many people have asked, how do we get involved? How do I meet people? How do I be a part of this movement? Well, we have a Discord server with tens of thousands of people where you go to timcast.com, you sign up, you join that Discord. You're going to meet people, you're going to make friends, and you're going to help make the world a better place. But you'll also get access to our members-only uncensored shows. We're not doing that this week. And I hate to say it, but the only way I'm able to actually talk right now is that I've taken Advil to reduce the inflammation, as I've basically lost my voice. Streaming for over 9 hours and recording multiple shows in 1 week will do that to you, but we're here for you because the show must go on. So smash that like button, share the show with everyone you know, and joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more, we got Michael Knowles.
What's going on, guys? Good to be with you.
Absolutely. You also got no sleep.
I got no sleep. I got 2 hours on election night. We did the election show, which I was on here with you guys. I go home. I realized now I have to write my own show for the morning. For some reason, I decided to do a show at 6:30 in the morning, or whatever it is, 8:30 in the morning Central Time. And then things just keep happening. So we're all just talking all the time. Luckily, though, I'm just powered by a constant stream of Mayflower cigars. Can I offer anybody a cigar? Would anybody care for one?
Oh, please.
You know what?
I feel like we didn't celebrate enough already, but we might have
Can we
to.
smoke in here right now?
Absolutely. I'm making an executive decision. Would you have one?
I can barely talk.
You would.
I'll have one.
Would you? You
I'll
would have one.
Yeah, the audience
Turning
would be
down the
happier
cigar
if I
from you,
didn't
Mr.
talk.
Knowles, I could never.
All right, guys. You want the dawn or the dusk? The light or the dark?
Do you have a
Give me a
recommendation?
lighter one.
Can you
Yeah,
go
what do you
for
have?
them?
I want something kind of light right now. I'm
Give him
pretty
the
tired.
biggest one.
Okay, that's great. Just a big fat stick. So I'll give you the light one, the dawn. What are you thinking? Now, here, I'm gonna flick it overhand.
All right.
You want to try the dusk?
Can I have the
Maybe
baby
balance
one?
it
What's
out?
the small one?
Little baby dawn.
It'll
baby.
be my first cigar.
Your first.
Really?
Hey,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
right,
yeah.
man.
You're gonna.
Wow. You always remember your first. I am reliable.
Do you need
Be
the...
careful of that. Do we got a lighter and an ashtray?
Oh
I
yeah,
have a lighter.
We might need to fly in an ashtray, or we can just burn down the Daily Wire studio.
I would not recommend that.
Yeah,
I mean, Antifa probably wants to right now, considering the election results.
I think so. That we are trying not to disclose.
yeah, I
our
mean, look,
location.
if we accidentally burn the place down, they'll call it mostly peaceful.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're okay.
But I know that you've got the special Mayflower ones.
I do. This is a special size that was made just for me that I never got to try until a year into my company. This is the Corona Gorda Mayflower cigar, and it was the perfect thing to smoke on election night. I heard from the CEO of the company that produces these two blends for me, and He said he basically has had a cigar in his teeth for every minute other than 4 hours, say, since election night. I mean, this is a celebratory time.
Well, all right. Well, Michael is lighting up some beautiful cigars. Elaad is here.
Hey, everybody. I am Elaad Eliyahu. I'm a journalist here at Timcast. You might need to pass that lighter to me after. I feel like very strong and powerful with this in my hand, Michael knows so.
Mm-hmm. That's how it works.
Absolutely. So I'm happy to be here. Seamus, what's up, man?
Happy to be here as well. Seamus Coughlin, creator of Freedom Tunes. We've released 4 videos so far this week. 1 video every single day. We're releasing a really funny one tomorrow. We've got ones planned all the way through to the middle of next week. So it's just going to be a flurry of uploads. I hope you guys enjoy them. Go over to Freedom Tunes. And if you want to help to support us in our massive flurry of uploads, become a member at freedomtunes.com. You'll get access to our behind the scenes podcast. And we are also working on making some cool projects that we will give more information about later on.
Chat says, Elaad, don't inhale the smoke. Keep it in your mouth.
Absolutely. Well, I'm waiting for an ashtray, and then we'll start
wait for the ashtray before you sit.
Yeah, I don't know if we can fly in an ashtray. Otherwise, I'm going to ash into those jelly beans right now.
You should.
I am Phil Labonte. I'm the lead singer of the heavy metal band All That Remains. I'm an anti-communist and a counter-revolutionary, and let's get this on.
Well, here's the big story. I love this one. It's a little bit of a development. Stephen A. Smith distances himself from Jimmy Kimmel after Kimmel cries over Trump win. Wouldn't have been me. Yeah, I'd be pretty embarrassed too if a bunch of my friends were crying on TV. But we have the clip for you guys, and I hope this brightens up your day.
Let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth and democracy and decency. And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
It was not.
My favorite
I had a great
part,
time.
He said it was a terrible time, a night for democracy. Bro, democracy won. But the best point that I want to make is he only starts crying when he gets to Ukraine.
Seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine.
Is that his biggest concern right now?
He doesn't care about the American
poor,
people at all.
Women. No, it's Ukraine.
Yeah. And notice, by the way, like he refers specifically to identity groups. Right? Because that's the most important thing to them. We can't have national sovereignty and patriotism and solidarity and stand with one another as Americans. It has to go, well, our favorite minority groups or oppressed classes are having a bad time.
The most likely situation in Ukraine is that Donald Trump becomes president. They come to some kind of negotiated peace. Ukraine does lose some territory because they're not going to give back Crimea, and probably I think it's the Donbass or the area that they were after. But the dying stops.
Exactly.
The dying stops. So I don't know what the hell this guy's talking about. The idea that it's a bad thing to stop the killing, the absolute horror of trench warfare. I don't know about anybody else, but you can but I've looked at some of the trench warfare stuff. It's absolutely unimaginable.
Well, legitimately,
it is.
The strategy, the grand strategy here is just to use Ukraine as a meat grinder to kill Russian soldiers.
It's disgusting.
That's
and it's for money because there are investments in Ukraine by a bunch of different companies. They're invested in Mike Benz was talking about this the other day, I believe on the PBD broadcast, but I don't know it well enough.
Mike Pence went on the PBD podcast? That's impressive. Wow.
I think the same thing every time.
It's hard to ever take him.
Did you guys see? There's a story, and Donald Trump Jr. tweeted this out. It was hilarious. Hamas is already calling for an end of the war the moment Trump got elected, and Donald Trump Jr. was like, my father hasn't even gotten into office yet, and already he's ending wars.
It's Reagan all over again.
It's so
the
frustrating.
same thing happened with the hostages being released as soon as he was elected. And one of the hilarious things is the left is still trying to spin that to this day. I remember when I was in high school, what we were taught by our history book and by our history teacher was that the Republicans were actually meddling behind the scenes to ensure that the hostages weren't released until Reagan was president. But of course, they were going to do it anyway. Everyone knows that that's nonsense. The reality is they were more afraid of Reagan.
He needs your cutter.
Oh, did you cut the cigar? No, you got to cut. You got to cut the cigar.
I need to cut something off.
I'm going to pass that on down. That's a little Mayflower cutter.
But yeah, they'll be trying to make the same arguments. Well, it was actually collusion, and the Trump campaign was talking with them, or some other such nonsense.
And you put in your mouth. Oh no!
Yeah, that end's already cut.
You want me to give me the cigar?
Maybe give it to Phil.
Cut this, okay.
Just a little bit, just a little tiny touch. Let me say a little bit more than that.
You're circumcising it.
Yeah.
Is that what this tool is used for? This looks like a very. Is this Mayflower logo as well?
My night job is I'm a mohel, so it's very handy.
Mazel tov.
Yeah. Perfect. That's great.
Okay. Spark up the Mayflower.
Watch you absolutely brutalize your
cigar. You need to puff on to get it going.
There we go. Maybe try to keep it a little more parallel to the ground.
Spin it too.
A little bit. There
you go. And turn it, twist it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Keep twisting.
First cigar.
Thank you, Michael Knowles.
That's my pleasure.
Timcast here. This tastes delicious. This Mayflower cigar might be the best cigar I've ever smoked.
I believe it.
These microphones are going to smell like Mayflower forever.
Are these yours?
It's a blessing.
Do we not do this?
Yours?
Anyway,
We won the election.
I'm smoking a cigar.
We're like the political bosses in the back room smoking cigars, talking politics. What are we going to do next? Donald Trump won the election?
Yeah, we're ending war. That's usually the opposite of what they do in Smoke Filter
Media
Room.
Matters is going to use this as the right-wing cigar room.
what do you think, Michael? What do you think happens now? I mean, it looks like we're going to get the House. It's going to be maybe even 222 seats.
Yeah.
With the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and the Supreme Court.
So you need.
Are they going to do anything?
Look, I every day that goes by that we don't have results in a race, to me, creates at least the appearance of an opportunity for shenanigans. So I was really elated that Trump sweeps the Rust Belt, wins the Sun Belt. He just absolutely crushes. And then I wake up today and I see Sam Brown, marvelous candidate for Senate in Nevada, and he's leading by a little bit. And then all of a sudden, big batch of votes comes in. Oopsie daisy, Jackie Rosen got it.
Now hold on. Here's my question about that. Was this actually, because that's what I heard this, that it's mail-in votes that came in after Election Day?
I don't know that for a fact.
Right.
But I do know that the numbers jumped real quick today. Thank you, sir.
And I heard it was a last-minute batch of mail-in votes that just came in. Everybody's saying this, and I'm saying if that's true, file a lawsuit, cite the Fifth Circuit Court, and throw them out.
Look, I don't know when, even if it were just mail-ins in general, mail-ins that were mailed at the legal moment, it just creates the appearance of impropriety when 3 days later you say, okay, top of the ticket, swept the Sun Belt, swept the Rust Belt, and then all of a sudden, we're losing in Wisconsin, we're losing in Michigan, we're losing in Nevada down ballot. I don't know, we probably were going to lose in Arizona down ballot anyway, but I don't know, it just creates the appearance of impropriety. So regardless, all right, we're not going to have 55.
I got to be honest, Kerry Lake's only down 51,000?
Really?
Yeah, with 75 in. And they are saying it's going to go...
Gallego?
To Gallego?
Yeah.
I still don't trust any of it.
Well, actually, okay, if the new ballots are helping Kerry, then I take back everything I said about mail-ins. I'm very pro-mail-in now. They're great. Bring it, please. Get me more from maybe outside of Maricopa.
You cynic.
I'm just... Look, the whole process is a little cynical these days.
You're not wrong.
But, okay, let's say we get 53 seats, 52, 53 in the Senate. Let's say even 218, 219 in the House. I mean, better 220, 221, 222. But at that point, then you got the Supreme Court. You've got Thomas and Alito likely would retire by the end of Trump's term. So then you replace them with young justices, I hope, who can fill their shoes. Things are looking up. But you still have that other branch of government that we haven't talked about, which is the bureaucracy.
Well, I do need to say this. I think, Michael, it's time for unity, and it's time to reach across the aisle. The Democrats have some policies that we've never liked, but I think we should embrace, like expanding the Supreme Court starting on January 21st.
So I'm hoping we do that.
And it was their idea. It's
court reform.
Absolutely. And we should give it to them.
You know what else we got to do? In the spirit of unity and bipartisanship, they really wanted to end the filibuster. So I think with 52 seats this is a prime time to end the filibuster.
I completely and totally agree with you.
Yeah, Democrats, we didn't agree with those policies, but we're gonna make concessions now for the sake of unity.
It's an olive branch. We're extending them an olive branch.
We are such gracious, charitable people.
Mr. Knowles, there's been a lot of chat about like a so-called political realignment. Trump won all of the swing states with this new coalition of young men and Hispanic voters. Do you believe this is a new coalition, a new realignment that we're seeing?
It manifestly is. I hear this every cycle over the past decade. It's a realignment. It never quite comes to pass. But 20% of black men, that's shocking. 46% of Hispanics, That's shocking. We haven't seen that since Bush. I think that actually beats Bush's numbers in 2004. You see labor votes following the Teamsters' decision not to endorse the Democrat. That's pretty shocking. I mean, that's just undeniable at a certain point that a realignment has taken place. Meanwhile, who were the biggest boosters of the Democrat ticket? The Cheney family. You can't. That's not a realignment. I don't know what is.
They were calling on W.
Yeah.
They were saying, George W. Bush, you need to say something.
And
you
of
need to
course-
say something. Fascism's on the ballot, which is hilarious because, as we all know, they called him a fascist. They've called everyone before him a fascist. Literally going all the way back to Ike Eisenhower. Eisenhower was called a fascist by the left.
Yeah.
It's just, and not just a fascist, they called him a Nazi. They called him Hitlerian.
Well, my favorite thing is that they were calling on Hitler from 2003 to fight against Hitler from 2024.
Save us, Hitler. You're our only hope.
Exactly.
Where are you? Yeah.
That's going to get clipped.
Hold on. I should have been facing the camera if only. I loved. Speaking of groups that clip you dishonestly, you saw that not only did Kamala concede, but Kamala HQ has called it quits. You know, the campaign Twitter. And I'll tell you, man, I'm going to miss it. I got great publicity out of them. I think they repelled so many voters and sent them into Trump's camp, or at least convinced them to stay home.
Well, not me, because they defamed me, and we have a pending case against them and are awaiting a response in our lawsuit.
Hey, so, look, I thought about that. I thought about suing them because they truly and incontrovertibly defamed me. But I was kind of just too tired to put the whole thing together. Can I just jump on? Can this be like a class action thing where you just give me my cut of the proceeds at the end?
No.
Darn.
Honestly, so the only thing I can say about it is for everybody who's waiting, these things take forever, and I'm not entirely sure what happens next because they're done. But as far as I know, we are moving forward in every reasonable, meaningful way legally, and we have. I don't know what I'm supposed to say on this one, but the filing is public. All the movement should be publicly available. That's publicly available, I guess, and it's going. So I expect. I demand satisfaction.
I demand. You know, they said that I was a big Project 2025 person because I don't know, because I know Kevin Roberts. I guess that was the only. They had no connection to it whatsoever, and I thought, you guys are giving me real promotions here on your account. But it was very telling that the way that the Trump campaign attacked Kamala was by revealing her own policies in her own words. You know, when she said she wanted to ban fracking, Tim Walz on his abortion extremism and transgender extremism. And the way the Kamala camp attacked us was by just completely making stuff up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally true. Part of what was particularly hilarious, I don't know if you saw this today, but your colleague, Matt Walsh, tweeted, I believe 2 days ago, that now that Trump's in office, we should just start admitting that we really wanted Project 2025, which was an obvious joke and was hilarious. But part of what's really funny about that is there were left-wing accounts screenshotting that, retweeting it, saying, see, the credulous media trusted Republicans, which firstly, the media smeared Trump with Project 2025 constantly. But what I find so funny about that is the fact that Matt Walsh is a man who built his career trolling liberals
With deadpan.
just released a documentary that crushed at the box office, which is exclusively based on him trolling liberals. His profile picture is him dressed as the character he trolled liberals as, and liberals saw his tweet trying to troll them, and they still
Totally
took
went
the
for
bait.
it.
It's hilarious. There is not an easier group of people to troll because they're so desperate to be self-serious.
Yes.
That's the terrifying thing about Matt is his deadpan.
It's so good.
Deadpan troll
Stone
delivery.
cold psychopath, without question.
Yeah.
The thing that's also crazy about it is anyone who's really in the know in conservatism knows we're not about Project 2025. We're about Project 2026.
That's right.
Even bigger, baby.
One more.
You don't know what's in it. It's one more than 25.
Yeah.
It really seemed like
25, that was old.
That's old time.
more than anything else, it feels as though Project 2025 and the fear-mongering around it was desperation from the Democrats as they were trying to claw at something to attack Trump.
Also, by the
And
way,
it's very moderate. If you've actually read through anything in Project 2025, it doesn't even come close to being fringe right.
the Project 2025 is a project of the Heritage Foundation, which is the most mainstream conservative think tank. And also, what is even meant by Project 2025 is just a list of personnel that could staff an administration. It's It's a database of email addresses.
To be fair, the left looks at anything that is, to the right of what they currently want. Not what they currently have, but what they currently want.
Yeah.
Anything to the right is the absolute end of the world.
Yes.
There is no moderation. There's no ability to moderate their emotions. Everything is an absolute catastrophe. Anytime they lose anything.
I want to jump to the story from Daily Mail. CNN host silenced as Democrat strategist turns on colleagues, quote, "We are not the party of common sense." CNN contributor Julie Roginski criticized onlookers and her own colleagues during the segment. The argument was triggered after another on-air contributor asked Roginski if Biden should have dropped out of the race sooner. Roginski explained through a series of what she called hard truths why she believes the Democratic Party had become increasingly out of touch. Similar criticisms were waged in the wake of the election in 2016, where many counted out Trump as a credible threat. In fact, they were calling him the Pied Piper candidate. Here we go. Let's play the clip.
I'm going to speak some hard truths to my friends in the Democratic Party. This is not Joe Biden's fault. It's not Kamala Harris's fault. It's not Barack Obama's fault. It is the fault of the Democratic Party in not knowing how to communicate effectively to voters. We are not the party of common sense, which is what the message that voters sent to us. For a number of reasons. We don't know how to speak to voters. When we address Latino, and language has meaning. When we address Latino voters as Latinx, for instance, because that's the politically correct thing to do. It makes them think that we don't even live on the same planet as they do. When we are too afraid to say that, hey, college kids, if you're trashing a campus at Columbia University because you're unhappy about some sort of policy and you're taking over a university, and you're trashing it and preventing other students from learning, that is unacceptable. But we're so worried about alienating one or another cohort in our coalition that we don't know what to say when normal people look at that and say, wait a second, I send my kids to college so they can learn, not so that they can burn buildings and trash lawns, right? And so on and so forth. When we put pronouns after names and say she, her, as opposed to saying, you know what, if I call you by the wrong pronoun, call me out. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. But stop.
Not even that.
Yeah, not even that. Not even that.
Just speak to people like they're normal. There's nothing I'm going to say to Michael.
I saw a really great post from some guy who's like a social democrat, and he was like, "Why can't Democrats just be normal? Yeah. No one wants millions of people storming across their borders and going into their homes."
Well, there's a famous communist theorist, Antonio Gramsci. Yeah. He's an Italian theorist, and in the prison notebooks, which is his great work that was translated actually by Pete Buttigieg's dad, Joseph Buttigieg. Yeah. So they're all, and Kamala is the daughter of a Marxist. So you're seeing them seep into the government. But Gramsci made a great point, which is that no revolution can succeed if the revolutionaries lose the common sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
You need to, if you don't have the common sense, the common people aren't going to want your cockamamie theories. And that's exactly what happened in 24.
Yeah, I think this STEM strategist is on point, but she's not addressing the elephant in the room, and that the older, more moderate Democrats are beholden to the youth of the party that is far left. The youth of the party does believe in gender changes. They do believe in these pronouns. They do believe in Latinx and all these extreme things that she's talking about. But that's where the power and excitement from the Democrat Party is coming from, and that's why they cannot abandon them.
Well, the other problem is the logic of the so-called moderate Democrats inevitably leads to the radical Democrats. So if the moderate Democrats say feminism's great, LGBT revolution is great, well, what you're really saying is men and women are basically the same.
Yes.
And so if you're saying men and women are basically the same, and then you're saying two men is the same as two women, is the same as a man and a woman, we can redefine marriage, we can redefine the social building block of marriage. Well, then don't you inevitably get to transgenderism? If men and women are the same, then why can't a man be a woman?
Wait, from gay marriage to transgender?
I don't see how you avoid it.
Yeah, no, well, what Michael's pointing out is that what the radical left does is just takes normie liberal positions to a more logical conclusion.
Yeah.
If you believe that men and women are interchangeable within a marriage, then men and women being interchangeable in a marriage, men and women being interchangeable in a sporting event is not that big of a deal.
First of all, it's not about what you think. It's about leftists and what they think. And it's not just that men and women are interchangeable. It's that all people are interchangeable.
Eventually, you're right.
If you talk to a leftist, they will tell you that anybody could do what Elon Musk could do if they were put into the same conditions. Mm-hmm. It's about nurture versus nature. They believe that if you take any human being and put them into a situation and give them all the same things that they had leading up to it, they would be the same thing. And it's not true at all.
I think the
That's
difference
exactly
here,
what they think.
I think think the difference here is that gay marriage doesn't defy science, right? Two dudes.
Does it not? I don't know.
To have children, it does, but as far as
There you
them
go.
just
What's
being
marriage?
crazy men or doing whatever they have to do, gender change operations defy science. Telling somebody they could change genders defies science. Saying you're attracted to a man, you could think there's things about that are wrong or incorrect, but like there's a scientific base for gender.
But I think you just made the point very well, because I guess maybe we need to do a new Matt Walsh documentary. Instead of what is a woman, it's what is marriage. What distinguishes marriage from any other combination of two people? I got buddies. We're buddies. We're hanging out. My buddy and I are not married. Because we don't do the things that married people do, fortunately. And
there's an Adam Sandler movie about this. I'm not kidding. There is.
Well, no, but yeah, it's like a scientific question. It's a philosophical question, but like just on a scientific basis, sodomy and sex are two different things.
They're different things.
But it's gays can have sex, and there's no scientific question
They
here.
can have sex
But I
with
think there
women.
is a question whether or not a man can become a woman. You could question, what is marriage? It's supposed to be a religious institution. And
No, I'm
that's
not even
why
saying that. I'm
it's-
just saying at a very natural, basic level. It would seem to me, and I'm just off the top of my head here, that marriage is a union between a man and a woman for the
a religious
purpose-
union, though.
Well, I'm not even
actually
saying that.
necessarily.
I'm
Not
just
all
saying
marriages
it's
are religious.
a union between a man and a woman for the purpose of begetting and educating children, and as a secondary matter for the mutual support of the spouses. That's what defines what marriage is. Just like the Leftist Tears tumbler exists to give me delicious leftist tears and sometimes spindrift, just like the cigar exists to give me tasty, delicious Mayflower smoke, so too marriage exists for a purpose. And so if you get two fellas together, or two ladies, or three dudes and a billy goat, they're in some kind of union. I'm not denying that, but it's different.
Now,
and distinct from marriage.
but I do get what Elaad is saying, because remove the word marriage from it and say a legal apparatus has been created for tax purposes and legal rights in hospitals and things for people who are together as partners, whatever you want to call it. Going to someone and saying, we're gonna telling a child especially, you can be the opposite gender, is not possible in any way. What they could say is, we can give you a surgery so that you can be a facsimile or representation similar to a female, but you will never be female.
But isn't that's the same thing as gay marriage? It's a facsimile or a kind of parody that seems similar to marriage, but it's not.
So the issue is telling people that they arguing marriage. I get what you're saying, but I understand what Elaad, the point he's trying to make is that there's no irreversible surgery involved to a child. It's like if two guys are living in a room, we can argue the definition and say this is not
right. Well, and this is a great point, really, which is like, if we're all agreeing that broadly as a matter of logic, that's true, and there's a fair analogy here, but it doesn't strike people the same way. And I think this is what happened in 2024. Right. People don't really, two guys want to do a Will and Grace thing, whatever. That doesn't affect them. They don't think about it. But you see a little kid being castrated, being put on cross-sex hormones, being brainwashed by his public school teacher, who's a far leftist. You just think at a gut level that is so repulsive that you are going to vote against anybody who promotes that.
Mm-hmm. Electorally speaking, too, gay marriage, I don't think is what she was alluding to. I think she was talking about the trans stuff and going a little bit farther. In the Republican Party, we have a large amount of LGBTQ, or I don't know about the TQ, but at least the LGBT.
Bruce Jenner,
and in Trump's cabinet there, Rick Grinnell is, probably going to have a cabinet position. So I think that stuff, the super unpopular stuff that I think most adult Democrats are, again, repulsed by, thinking that you could change genders, but they're at least decently okay with.
But I guess to bring it full circle, my only point on this is not that the Supreme Court's going to overrule Obergefell. That's not going to happen anytime soon. President Trump has not called for anything like that.
That's what they said about Roe v. Wade, though. So but settled law.
With Roe v. Wade, conservatives were actively trying to overrule that for 50 years. There's very little appetite.
And even the liberals on the court knew that it was a bad decision.
I remember the spin about Roe v. Wade was settled law.
No.
You guys remember that phrase?
Yes,
you guys remember settled law?
Yeah.
You remember settled law?
I just want to say, don't hold the conservative movement accountable for things that lawyers say. All right, because they're always going to have a sketchy way of putting it.
Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg is on record saying it was a bad decision, that it was a bad thing for the court. So well, I'm not. You can't disagree with it. She said it.
I don't disagree with her that it was properly done legally.
So it's one thing to say, "Oh, Roe was settled law," etc. But the conservatives had been making the case that they were going to eventually change it forever. Like,
Yeah.
Am I
ever
out of
since
touch
it
here?
went
Was
in.
it not constantly said about Roe v. Wade that it was settled?
what Democrats were saying,
which was
though.
technically
No,
true.
Republicans and
Yeah,
right-wingers
but-
would say this
but
too to
here's
try
what
to
would happen.
alleviate their concerns.
Here's what
about
would
it.
happen. You get a conservative judicial nominee would come up, and you'd get some radical lib, fanatical for killing babies, would say, do you agree with Roe v. Wade, whatever? And then the conservative would say, totally truthfully, say, Roe versus Wade is settled law, which was true at the time.
It's a lawyer answer for
hey,
you.
Smile. Look at this laugh.
That's also the same thing that Kamala Harris was doing when she said, "I will follow the law" when people pose difficult questions to her, which
Right.
she did.
That's
right.
I'm gonna guess I'm an idiot for believing that because I remember 5 years ago hearing,
Yes,
"Oh,
you
settled
are.
law." I was
No, I
like,
mean,
"Oh yeah, that sounds about right."
You can
Settled
believe
law.
that. You can believe that.
First of all, why would you ever believe a lawyer?
We
But
settled this,
secondly,
right?
But I guess to bring it full circle, the reason I bring up the marriage thing is not that anyone's going to go back to before Obergefell. It's not going to happen anytime.
It's settled law.
It's settled law. but the reason is because we're trying to figure out how the moderate Democrats can deal with the really woke Democrats and the liberals and the leftists. But the thing is, they can't. They can't avoid. It's just
the Anti-Communist Act of 1954. I think is what. Let's bring that bad boy back.
Hold on,
and that'll take
guys.
care of all
Guys,
this.
settled law.
No. It is already settled law in the 1964 Civil Rights Act that communists are exempt from civil rights protection.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
This is not a joke.
Yeah.
That's true.
Shout out to Josie, the redheaded libertarian, for broadcasting this message.
Based.
Now, it's a reality, but let's do this.
Wait, I just want to make one quick point. I was trying to get in here about the debate. It'll be very quick. But
No, we don't want to hear it. Anyway,
It's already settled law,
I
Seamus.
just
We're
wanted
already
to say,
settled.
I just
We
wanted to
settled
say
it.
it's settled law. No, all I wanted to say here was even though you're right that she wasn't pointing to like homosexual unions specifically, the reality is all of the victories for the LGBTQ movement had to be forced onto the public through the courts. Nobody ever voted for it. So
And when they
that
did vote, they voted against it.
Exactly. Even in California, it had to be
California,
forced
yeah.
on the public in California. So this is an issue that has been forced from the top down. People aren't calling for it, so it's not going to be popular in the voting booth.
Yeah.
I want to jump to this story from Wired. The Manosphere won.
As we sit here smoking cigars.
Maybe they're right after all. Yeah.
Someone fly in tea, please.
So first of all, this is not a manosphere show. We're not masculine-oriented young men or any of that stuff. But they say
For yourself.
Donald Trump owes at least part of his victory to the manosphere, the amorphous assortment of influencers who are mostly young, exclusively male, and increasingly the drivers of the remaining online monoculture.
I like they called
They're
it-
going to mention Nelk Boys, Aiden Ross, Schultz, Sean Ryan, Joe Rogan. They say, but he's the one you've definitely heard of. You're going to hear a lot of attribute Trump's win to all kinds of reasons, inflation, et cetera, et cetera. They say it was these podcasts and streams that Trump spent a disproportionate amount of time in the final weeks of his campaign for a good reason. That list above, plus Tucker Carlson, includes the four biggest podcasters on Spotify. Trump sat with all of them, often for hours, reaching millions of conservative or apolitical people, cementing his status as one of them, a Sigma guy, a guy with clout, and the apex model of masculinity that prioritizes fame as a virtue unto itself. Certainly not the message that was delivered, because nobody looks at it that way. But what I love about this is they mention his podcast appearance, and then they have this. They say what Trump and his team understood is that the disclosure, to whatever extent that means, anything anymore, no longer happens in op-ed columns or The Daily Show. Kamala Harris seemingly did not. She did appear on Call Her Daddy, a stratospherically popular podcast with an audience primarily comprising young women, and her campaign enlisted a number of influencers as surrogates. But she skipped Rogan, Lex Fridman, and other mainstream adjacent marathon podcasts. And even if she hadn't, the world of conservative influencers dwarfs their liberal counterparts in both follower size and impact. In the same way Democrats never found their own Rush Limbaugh, they don't have a Steven Crowder or a Ben Shapiro or even, so help us, a Tim Pool. There are Democrats with followings online, but the cumulative gap in people paying attention to what they say is several orders of magnitude wide. Reflect, please.
I love that.
Reflect on this.
Yeah, what
My
does that mean?
neighborhood in Chicago flipped for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I want to say this.
It's MAGA
and,
country.
and Seamus, too.
Yeah, that's right. When I was a little
Ridge-
kid, I lived there. Very
Garfield
little.
Ridge boys right here. And this is blue Chicago. In 2016 was blue. It started to turn red in 2020. And now Garfield Ridge and Clearing are red.
Yeah.
Not the entirety, but in the westernmost portion, there's a gigantic red square of my entire neighborhood. Everyone's like Trump.
It's because of you and the manosphere that you lead, obviously.
Yeah,
so help us.
I love that they're talking about how there's like no Tim Pool or whatever, and they totally ignore the communists. The Twitch communists. I'm not even going to say his
many
name.
of them.
Everyone knows the Twitch communist that I'm talking about, the himbo.
Right, yes, but I want to say this because a point was made. Mehdi Hassan was talking to some guys on some show, and he was like, they said Kamala should have gone on Rogan, and he goes, no, we Democrats needed Joe Rogan. And the response was, they had one. His name was Joe Rogan.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. Well, I also just want to point this out. This term manosphere is hilarious because it just turns being a man into a political opinion. What do these podcasts actually have in common with one another? What they're saying is we have failed to secure the male vote. So what we're going to do is tie together a coalition of things in podcasts that men happen to enjoy and then say, this is a dangerous political movement that was working against us.
I need to stress this real quick because they're saying we don't have a Tim Pool. You did have a Tim Pool. His name was Tim Pool. My neighborhood in Chicago, which has been Democrat my whole life, which had the mayor come down, a Democrat mayor that everyone cheered for, is now voting for Trump. It's not that you don't have one. It's that Democrats want to live in a world where the only thing that makes you a Democrat is choosing to be a Democrat.
They're like, we don't have a Garfield Ridge.
They're thinking, what they're saying is, we need a podcaster who, no matter what happens, no matter what the policies, they will always just say they're a Democrat.
The liberals have ostracized everything masculine and coded it as right wing. And now when it's come to bite them in the ass in the election with younger men, they're saying, oh, what's going on? Why are they going to Theo Vaughn, Joe Rogan, people who talk about stereotypical masculine things? And why is this all right wing coded? Because they made it that way. They ostracized all the people who, if you go to the gym, it's right wing coded. All of these things that are traditionally masculine have become right wing coded, and now it's
if you get married and have children, that's now like that's a trad right wing.
That's fine. It's actually a good thing for us.
I agree,
because if the left hates young men, hates masculinity, there are innumerable positive things about masculinity. Competency is masculine. There's just an endless array of things that are masculine that are good. If the left hates those things, if they hate winning, if they hate all things that go along with masculine men, that's okay. Let them come to the right.
I agree.
I think they also admitted here that the media is on the outswing. They're saying their op-eds are no longer relevant. Now what matters is going on Theo Vaughn and Tim Pool and Joe Rogan.
Totally.
It doesn't matter if you write an op-ed in the New York Times. Nobody reads it anymore. Nobody cares. It's an echo chamber.
And I will give a shout out again to Josie. On YouTube, you can search for 1776X Josie and subscribe. Just at 10,000 subscribers with their new channel, so shout out.
Well, I just want to mention, I'm actually shocked that they didn't mention White Guys for Harris as a force that helped deliver the fraction of the male vote that they did get. The reality is, I was watching some of their ads and making fun of them, and you'll notice, you'll notice that in none of the messaging they put out there do they ever say a single good thing about white men. Yeah. So it's all, you can be different from the other white men. You can stand above the fray. But it's like, if you want to appeal to a demographic, you have to at least be willing to say one good thing about them as a group. They can't do it. I was watching an ad they made a while ago, and it was actually one I saw because Matt Walsh retweeted it and said, like, this looks like a woman's idea of what a man ad should be or something. It was just obviously not written by a man, and if it was, certainly not written by a straight man. But it's going on about like, hey, white guys, kind of stinks being told we suck all the time. I get it, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, okay, let's just sidestep the fact that it's your party telling us we suck all the time, and then never say any reason why that shouldn't happen or why white men are good. And so this is my challenge to any political leader on the left or any pundit on the left who's concerned about the fact that you don't have the white male vote. Say one good thing about white men without throwing caveats at it, without giving a but, without mentioning historic injustices. Say one thing you appreciate or are grateful to white men for.
They will never do it.
Exactly. And that is why they will never get our vote.
We like the results on Tuesday. Don't listen to Seamus. We like the results we got. Don't listen to him.
Actually, I think the important thing for Democrats to realize is that Kamala ran a perfect campaign, and it's misogyny's fault.
Exactly. It's misogyny's fault.
And they should next time they run a campaign, it should be the same as Kamala.
They're in meltdown right now, though. Again. They're melting down because they've already alienated white men intentionally. But the group of people, the two groups of people that delivered that margin of victory were black guys and Hispanics broadly. So the new white supremacists are blacks and Hispanics. And you've heard it on The View, you've heard it on cable news, the black men and Hispanics are now being accused of misogyny.
That's right.
And that might carry some water if Trump had not also done better with women than he did last time. The women started to move over, including young and single women.
Well, see, Michael, the women did it because they're racist, and the minorities did it because they're sexist.
Right,
But I'll also say this. If the Democrats weren't in a bad enough position now with some of the minority groups that they're losing as voters, I think they've put themselves in an even worse position after this election. Because a lot of what I have seen has been statements about how this was only because of racism or some other kind of ism, but primarily racism. And part of why I think that's so insulting is because, firstly, it's not as if a black person can't win a presidential election. We've seen it happen. Barack Obama literally won the presidential election.
His mom was white.
We know. Hold on. We know that black people can win elections in this country. And so I just find it astounding and incredibly tone deaf that when they nominated a woman who didn't win a primary, who is extremely unlikable, who is a cackling, bubble-headed fool who was far to the left of what any American wanted, and then she lost, they went, that's because she's black. We just can't nominate black candidates and win.
Yeah, I guess the real issue they should be dealing with is the we nominate part. Because, probably if they want their black woman or however Kamala's going to identify next time, if they want her to win the general, they need her to win a single primary ever. That is probably going to be conducive to her success.
And it's because they're so shocked. You see, like, how did this happen? How is it that this horrible candidate who's very unpopular and didn't win a single primary lost the presidential election to the single most popular candidate in the Republican Party? And how could this have happened? It's really obvious, actually.
How ridiculous is their messaging, right? They complained, like even Jimmy Kimmel was like, oh, democracy's in danger. We had a perfectly fair democratic election the night previous to when he's saying democracy's in danger. And they say, oh, we're worried about our democracy. And Kamala Harris was the least democratically elected she was selected. There was nothing democratic about her selection.
You saw, though, during her concession, she implicitly admitted that the democracy threat was all nonsense because she said, guys, it's going to be okay. We're sad, and it's okay to be sad, but it's okay. And so she's basically saying, hey, guys, we just elected Hitler, and that's okay. And so Hitler's okay with me. That's what she's saying.
Well, you go ahead.
I was going to say,
I just monologued
the two
for a bit.
things that I feel as though the Kamala Harris campaign was focusing on was, one, so-called democracy. And that was kind of debunked when she didn't win any primary votes. And she was focusing on January 6th and how Donald Trump was allegedly a threat to democracy. He was going to lock up all his political opponents. But how does that make any sense when Trump is facing multiple convictions across the country? Then abortion was their second top issue. And Trump dispelled that very aggressively when he said constantly that he would come out against the national abortion ban and wouldn't push that. So he quickly dispelled both of their big narratives, their big spin, and then we're dealing with the immigration crisis, and I'm glad the election turned out the way it did.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In terms of what Trump has to do in his first 2 years, in case things flip and he's not able to get things done. I mean, obviously, the deportations and the border security has to be first and foremost. Yeah. And also, I think something has to be done to put pressure on states to require photo ID in order to vote.
I want to jump to this tweet from our good friend David Pakman. He says, as we speak, progressives are tuning out due to understandable despondency over last night's results. I won't speak about others, but I've lost 10,000 YouTube subscribers overnight.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
When the right loses, they fund operations like Turning Point, invest in media, etc. If we abandon now, we cede total control to absolute lunatics. Not a good idea.
This is such retconning. Yes. I was on TV with Cenk Uygur. We were on Piers Morgan's show. And this was right after they picked Tim Walz. And I said, I think Tim Walz is a bad pick because he's an extreme leftist who tried to turn Minnesota into the windowless white van of the Midwest. Said, hey, trans kids, come on over here. I mean, he's a total wacko. And Cenk said, no, Michael, this was a great pick, and you'll see, you'll be crying on election day. It was smart of her to pick. So he agreed with my characterization that Walz was a leftist, and I would go further and say Kamala, in as much as she has any beliefs, is a radical leftist who wanted to end fracking and open borders and all the rest. So now you're getting this retconning from guys like Pakman saying, if only we'd picked a progressive, if only the progressives had turned out. Cenk said the same thing. If only we had a populist. Hey guys, you previously said you did that. Yeah. That didn't work. Well, so what are you going to do now?
The tweet here from David Pakman is that he lies to people. Well, okay, I'll be nicer. He's wrong so often. He was incredibly wrong now, and he's losing subscribers over it. And what we're hearing is that many of these prominent left and liberal channels are bleeding subscribers. I just want to say this. Kyle Kulinski, I used to think he was a nice guy. He's kind of gone off the deep end on X. When he posted a picture from an airplane looking at farms and then said, I wonder why it looks this way, he got dragged mercilessly for not knowing what a farm was. And I said, hey, look, he's an urban liberal guy, but he's been very nice, and he'll have a conversation with you. Well, my friends, before the election, the day before, he said his bearish prediction for Kamala was that she would win all swing states, Iowa and Florida. A remarkable prediction. He said what he thought was likely was that she would win every swing state, and his worst case scenario was that she would get 276. Why are these channels bleeding subscribers? I don't know if Kyle is, but why is David Pakman? Because they're wrong.
Yes.
Massively wrong.
Well, and we're seeing a lot of predictions from people who completely missed the election, right? People whose predictions about this election were disastrously wrong are now giving us their predictions on what the next 4 years are going to look like.
To be
and people
fair,
are saying, you know what, I'm actually not that interested. I don't think you've developed a good predictive model. I don't think you know what the American people want. I don't think you understand right-wing strategy or what conservatives are going to do when elected. I don't think you know what you're talking about.
To be fair to Kalinske, like, he's a leftist, and leftists are terrible with farming anyways. Historically, we know that.
That's a good point.
But the left has been saying all day for the past 2 days now that they haven't gone far enough left. That was the problem. There are a lot of the more far left people that are saying that. And you look at the graph that shows like the areas with the little small tiny little arrows that have gone to the right, and how far, and everything has been a right-wing sweep. There was a sweep of the people, or there was a sweep of the looks like the House is going to be definitely the Senate. There were a bunch of leftists recalled out of California. California's gave up a bunch of
George Gascon, the DA.
Yeah, he's gone. They gave up a bunch of counties that went right. And these people are saying, oh, well, the reason is because we didn't have enough people enough leftists, and the leftists stayed home. And what they're saying is, if you look at 2020, which was a totally novel and unique election, whether you think it was fair or not, it was unquestionably novel and unique. There was a totally new method of getting people to vote and getting ballots. And they're looking at that and they're saying, well, all those 14 million or 15 million or whatever people stayed home. And it's like, those were phantoms. Those people never voted regularly. They were never going to go to the polls. They were never going to actually get off their couch. If it was fair in 2020, and I'm only going for argument's sake, if it was fair, it was because the ballots were mailed to people's homes, they were filled out, and then someone went and picked them up. Yeah. Because the low propensity voters, the people that have no idea what they're voting for, filled out those ballots the way that they thought was the nice way to do it, and those ballots got turned in. That's the only way that it could have been.
When you look at like Pakman's Twitter account, he says Trump's final message that Pelosi's a bitch, and it's like, whatever, I get those things. I think this tweet right here is a granular example of what's wrong with the left and why they lose subscribers. RFK being in charge of all things medical is quickly becoming a major reason not to vote for Trump.
Wow.
But it's things like that. When you talk to a lot of liberals and hippy-dippy people, they're going, yeah, RFK Jr. is right. RFK Jr. had a video a month or two ago about this coal tar additive they use as yellow dye that people are eating that we know causes health problems. He talked about fluoride being in the water being a problem. David Pakman giving a knee-jerk nonsense reaction to RFK Jr. is why Democrats lose and why he loses subscribers. The response to RFK Jr. is, well, we need that message too. There are tons of hippy-dippy leftist organic farmers who are sitting there saying RFK Jr. is right about everything. And the Democrats are like, nah, you're all crazy. RFK Jr. is nuts. And you guys, we should all eat plastics and
You want to talk about a realignment. When I was a kid, all the hippies who ate the $15 eggs and worried about pesticides, they were all on the left.
Yes.
Now they are trad moms with like 4 kids in the suburbs.
But
no,
yeah,
it's absolutely right.
It was up this year, even in the past year and a half, 2 years. People on the right have been like, when did all the hippies start getting on the right? And it happened actually during COVID is when you noticed, when it was the vaccine stuff. But people were like, when did all the hippies start saying that Trump was good? There was some people that I saw a picture of that were at a Trump rally in tie-dye shirts that had Grateful Dead type imagery, and it said Trump on it. And people were baffled. The reason is because they have always been anti-government, anti-pharma, anti-big corporation. And now the Republicans are the ones that are like, look, all the big corporations are giving to the Democrats. All the big corporations are trying to tell us what to do. All the big corporations want to get involved in what we have to take.
And who runs those corporations? Who runs the establishment?
All Democrats.
The Democrats are now the party of the government. And maybe that's been the case for a while, but it didn't seem like that was the case.
Yeah.
So now, if you're skeptical of big power, wherever it may be, let's not forget Barry Goldwater. He wrote that a conservative is one who is skeptical of all monopolies, of all hyper-concentrated power. But now all that power isn't. That's why Democrats view the Trump election as an insurrection in itself. Forget about the Capitol. Forget about January 6th. They view it as an insurrection. And in a way, it kind of is, because the Democrats dominate the government.
Well, and here's the real scandal that none of them are willing to point to. They say people no longer trust the experts in the media or in medicine or in food processing and production. But why is that?
Yeah.
We are one of the most obese we are literally the fattest country on the planet. We are the most obese nation on the planet. We are one of the sickest developed nations on the planet. Everyone on the left acknowledges that we have one of the worst healthcare systems in the world. I would temper that a little bit. They take it a bit too far, but they're correct that there are many flaws with it. But then whenever somebody who isn't a quote-unquote expert, who's been trained by the same institutions that the left claims are broken and destroying our country, they go, this person isn't an expert. You can't listen to them. Well, where has listening to the experts gotten us? It's made us the most obese nation on the planet. We have food that makes us less healthy. We have a medical system that seems to want us sick. We have a media that tells us lies and misinforms people and clearly didn't have the predictive power to tell us where this election was going to go or what the American people wanted. So maybe you should try challenging the experts if you want to win, because they have been leading you in this entire country in the wrong direction for decades, and everyone knows it. And even if you plug your ears and yell at people and call them bigots for acknowledging that reality, it's still true, and everyone else sees it. So why don't you come join the party?
So I do have a correction, though. I have to correct you. We are not the fattest country in the world.
We are the most obese.
We are not. We're number 19.
We're number 19 now? If I'm not mistaken,
it was not the fattest.
There are countries more fat or the most obese.
American Samoa, Tonga, Nauru, Tokelau, Cook Islands, Niue, Tuvalu, Samoa, French Polynesia.
Wait, but hold on. You said American Samoa.
Yeah, they sound like American territories.
That count? Doesn't that count?
We're still number one, baby.
Yeah, I want to claim it, even though it's like a little bit different. I want to claim the American Samoan.
I think Tonga should be number one, so that would put us at 18. You're right. America should not be on the list. But we're not. There's like Bahamas are fatter than we are.
Well, they have all that nice chicken and those little beef patties.
But my point is, if you go to other developed nations and see the food that they're eating, they eat much more than us, and they don't get as fat as us.
Yeah.
People will say this too. I went to Europe. I ate as much as I ate here. I felt better. My weight was lower. There's no question that there's a massive problem with obesity in the United States.
Michael, I wanted to follow up with you on something. So Trump and many former Trump officials.
Sorry, we are 18. You're right. Samoa is not supposed to be. They're very fat there, but Tonga is number one.
We need to claim American Tonga.
We need to get back to number one.
Oh yeah, I appreciate this. I think we're heading in the right direction. But Trump and many of his officials faced what it seems like motivated attacks from the Department of Justice and others. For example, Trump obviously had a bunch of cases. Steve Bannon only recently got out of jail.
Navarro.
Do you believe the Trump administration should go after Democrats who he believed broke the law, or strike a more conciliatory tone?
Well, certainly President Trump needs to enforce the law. I mean, the problem with Peter Navarro's case or Steve Bannon's case is that they were ruptures with the American jurisprudential tradition. We generally speaking, do not imprison senior White House officials for contempt of Congress. We had never done that before. Peter Navarro was the first one. Now we did that. Steve Bannon goes to prison.
I mean, convicting a former president.
And that's an even more extreme version. So I don't encourage that. I don't think that we should be jailing former presidents. Let Hillary go run amok. She can go take out her enemies or whatever she does in her spare time. But I don't think we should be jailing former top White House officials.
Well, I think at least right now, Merrick Garland needs to go to jail. I think Trump should bring in an AG and just say this country expects accountability and equality under the law. Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon served their time for contempt of Congress. Merrick Garland would do the same.
Or Eric Holder. Eric Holder also refused a congressional subpoena.
I'm okay with... I agree with you largely that we don't want to create this precedent. I think for right now, you've got a large portion of the American people who are upset that Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon went to prison and Merrick Garland did not. And this is within the same context. This is like within a few months of each other.
But you're saying you
Eric
want
Holder
to set
was
the
10
precedent.
years
They
ago.
set the precedent.
I'm saying we want to set the precedent that we have equality under the law, not one-sided. And that means we're not going to go back a decade for Eric Holder. But we are going to say, look, it was only a few months ago. Merrick Garland needs to go to prison for 4 months.
Or at least investigated and put on trial.
No, there's no investigation. He was held in contempt of Congress. That's it. So the DOJ just now needs to say that welcome to jail. And so that should happen.
The Bannon treatment.
Well, right. And it's, look, you're going to get minimum security. It's going to be comfortable and cushy, just like Steve Bannon got. But if we don't do this, the American people will believe that even when you vote because you demand equality under the law, you don't get it. So if we're going to say, fine, Steve Bannon went to prison, we have two options. Merrick Garland goes, or Trump issues a formal pardon to Navarro and Steve Bannon, and would have to compensate them. Because just saying it shouldn't have happened isn't enough, is not equality. He should say, this is either malicious prosecution of two individuals.
It obviously was.
In which case, they should receive a settlement compensation from the government and an apology, or it's not malicious prosecution and Merrick Garland should be in prison.
Well, at the very least, on the pardon point, there are a lot of people who need pardons. The majority of January 6thers who really were not violent. They were just redressing their grievances on a tough day. Those guys who got 2 years, they got to go. They got to get out.
Let me add to that. Many of them were not even redressing grievances. I met a couple that didn't know what was going on and were walking around D.C. Mm-hmm. They said this woman told me it was several hours after everything had stopped and people were leaving, and she walks up to the Capitol with no barricades, open sidewalks, and her husband walked to the building, which the doors were wide open. She walked inside and looked around for about a minute or two, took some pictures on her phone, and then left. And they were smiling and giggling, being like, they had no idea there's any violence. They'd seen nothing. And she said a couple months later, feds kicked her door in, arrested her, and she was sentenced to 18 months.
Many such cases.
Yep.
The other pardons that need to come through, there are people. There is a grandmother, a lovely pro-life grandmother, who is sitting in a federal prison right now. And there are actually multiple people who are sitting in federal prisons because they peacefully demonstrated at a baby killing site. And they were sentenced under the FACE Act. And the FACE Act was passed in the 90s, Bill Clinton. And the idea of the FACE Act was you can't block the entrances to abortion centers or pregnancy centers or even churches. And the thing is, it was totally bogus. They never prosecute anyone for going after the churches under the FACE Act. They never prosecute anyone for vandalizing or burning down pregnancy centers. It's only ever used to defend baby killing sites. All those people need to receive full pardons, and they need to repeal the FACE Act.
Well, all right. Remember Mark Houck? I just want to mention this really quickly. Yeah. Mark Houck was a man who was protesting outside of an abortion clinic, praying. The police were called because an old man was harassing and yelling at his son, and then the old man claimed that Mark Houck pushed him. The Soros-funded prosecutor decided not to move forward with charges because there was nothing there. And then a year later, under the FACE Act, his house is raided in the middle of the night, and he's arrested as if he's a dangerous criminal. Yeah. Even though a Soros-funded DA said there was nothing there to prosecute him with. My point is, when civilians who are guilty of wrongthink are punished this way, the idea that we're not going to go after either elected officials or unelected bureaucrats who are clearly and flagrantly disregarding the law for their political motives is insane. And if anyone says we need unity, okay, the time for unity can come if Trump decides to pardon some of them, but they absolutely need to have charges brought.
We got this story from the New York Sun. Trump lawyer Mike Davis threatens Letitia James with prison in fiery podcast tirade.
Was this real? I saw this going around.
Yes, I have the video for you from Benny Johnson's show. No. I thought it was fake too. When Phil told me, I said, Phil, there's no way that's real.
Let me just say this to Big Tish James, the New York Attorney General. I dare you. I dare you to try to continue your lawfare against President Trump in his second term. Because listen here, sweetheart, we're not messing around this time, and we will put your fat ass in prison for conspiracy against rights. And I promise you that. So think long and hard before you want to violate President Trump's constitutional rights or any other American's constitutional rights.
Look at Benny's
It's not
face.
going to happen again.
We've been warning people on the show, Mike, this isn't the same Trump administration. Stop messing around. Don't rig elections. Don't illegally vote.
I think I would like to see a special investigation, a special prosecutor counsel to review the falsifying business records case out of New York because there is no underlying crime.
Right.
So for those that aren't familiar with the story, Trump was charged with 34 counts of felony falsifying of business records, but that requires an underlying crime. They said it was falsifying records in furtherance of another crime and never named what the other crime was.
That's the only way that it could be, because it would have been a misdemeanor,
Right.
and the statute of limitations would have expired by the time they brought it. So they had to raise it to a felony, and in order to raise it for a felony, they have to show that it was in furtherance of some underlying crime, which they couldn't name, and the jury couldn't name.
Yeah, they never actually named the initial crime. So the idea that he was actually legally or legitimately convicted, that is a farce.
Plus, you
on
saw
its face.
already Jack Smith dropped the 2020 overturning the election case, which was wise of him to do. However, this to your point, to the point that everyone is making on this panel, what the Democrats have done, what was the greatest threat to our democracy, our sacred constitution, our republic that we have seen in recent memory, certainly in any of our lifetimes. And there does need to be some consequence for that, not out of cruelty, not because we want to just pound our enemies into the dust, but because if there is not retribution for injustices, you can fall into one of two errors when there's an injustice. You can be excessive and cruel, that's wrong, and you can be remiss and encourage further injustice and further threats to our country. We can't fall into the latter error here. We need to make sure that there is a just and appropriate punishment, or it's just going to happen again.
That's
Equality under the law.
That's right.
That's all we're saying. And this is what the Kamala campaign got mad at me for. I said that if we're going to go after anybody when Trump gets elected, it should be for real crimes. Yep. There must be evidence. Judges need to sign off on warrants. It's got to be all above board and done by the book perfectly. And we know there are people who have done wrong. Merrick Garland should be in jail for contempt of Congress. That happened.
This unequal application of the law is why I think so many Republicans struggle to condemn harshly January 6th when they see what happened during the George Floyd riots and all the support they got from Democrats. I believe Kamala Harris even had a bail fund set up.
It's still up. It's still on her
It's
Twitter.
still up for the people who are committing crimes throughout the George Floyd riots. But if any Republican were to do that for any of the January 6th people who were arrested on January 6th, they'd be
arrested themselves, probably.
That's absolutely
so the
right.
unequal application of the law here is really the issue, and that's why I have reluctance condemning a lot of the people who were arrested on January 6th. It's not to say that nobody did anything wrong, but
of course,
when Nancy Pelosi takes a knee in support of George Floyd and the BLM movement, at the same time, it's like these aren't honest actors. So that's why I really struggle with some of that stuff.
Yeah, we talk a lot in American political culture about authoritarianism, and it's this big, scary word. But if you would ask me to give a definition of what authoritarianism actually is, it's not when there's a lot of rules, and it's not even when rules are strictly enforced. It's when there's a lot of rules for the people, and those in power have no rules. I believe that authoritarianism is not when there are too many rules. It's when there are too few rules
Capriciously
for your
enforced.
government.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to fail to punish elected officials who abuse their power is not merciful. It's cruelty to the governed.
Yeah.
Speaking
That sounds
of
like
pardon-
Adam Smith to me.
Speaking of pardons, do you think that Donald Trump should consider a pardon for Hunter Biden?
Yes.
Michael Knowles?
Wait. I take it
Not
back.
if he
No.
were to do something like that, like not until everyone
On a
involved is
conciliatory
sick.
No. note.
Hunter Biden should not be pardoned because he needs to win. I want Hunter Biden to win. You want Hunter Biden to win. You know why?
Why?
Because he is being criminally charged for self-incrimination on the Nix form.
Yeah.
If he wins the Supreme Court and makes the argument, I should not have to self-incriminate when purchasing a firearm.
Right,
They
right.
throw that out. We get rid of this required self-incrimination.
No, he should be prosecuted for the serious crimes he committed,
Exactly.
not the low-hanging fruit nonsense.
Gun rights advocate Hunter Biden now.
That's right. Yeah.
I am not
take
going
it.
to get emotional and demand that he suffer because I can't stand his family or anything like that. I say this idea that we have a right against self-incrimination and the feds require you to tell them if you have in possession of or a user of illegal drugs is literally the government saying, tell us you've committed a crime so we can restrict your rights. Your right to keep and bear arms shall only be restricted through due process. That is penalty for some kind of violation. If you violate our laws, we can say, okay, well, you can't have a gun now. We can also lock you in a box for a long time. Hunter Biden was going to buy a weapon, and the government said, tell us if you committed a crime or not, self-incriminate, and then if you say yes, you can't have a gun. So he said no, he's charged for it. I think the Supreme Court should throw it out.
Yeah, maybe they should prosecute him for selling state influence to the Ukrainians and the Chinese. You know, that's probably a more serious
Tax
crime to go
evasion.
after. Return tax evasion.
They have to dink him with the lower level stuff so we could overlook the Burisma, all the Burisma stuff.
Right,
No,
right.
we'll get him on this gun charge.
Even the tax stuff is questionable. Because they're saying that he failed to pay. And I'm like, okay, hold on. I believe the penalty for failure to pay should be you have to pay. That's it. So going after a guy who's got the money and you're like, but you didn't pay on time, I'm like, I don't know.
But how else were we going to get Al Capone, you know?
Well, I do think I do think it's fair to say that in some circumstances, particularly with Hunter, is he intended to conceal the money so that he didn't have to pay.
Yeah.
That's different from just not paying.
Sophisticated tax evasion.
Yeah, absolutely. Very sophisticated. I mean, Hunter, he's
But all the
mastermind.
libertarians are like, nope, pardon him on that too because taxation is theft. I'm not on that boat though.
You know what is theft though? Yeah, the libertarians say taxation is theft, and I don't think that's true. But I read a good article the other day that inflation is theft.
Inflation is
Inflation is legitimately theft, and it's a very regressive form of theft. It hits the poorest people the hardest. But the government has no right to just recklessly inflate the currency because they think they're going to buy themselves a few political favors. I think that is theft from people.
It acts as a tax on people.
It's
because
worse
the
than
government is
tax, but it's
printing
worse
money
than
and
that.
making their money worthless.
Well, actually, so part of the reason that coins have ridges on them is because back when money was gold or silver or some precious metal, people would shave little bits off of the edge of the currency so that they could make extra money for themselves. If that is theft, then inflation is theft because it's just an abstract way of the Fed attempting to do the exact same thing.
Right.
Because, like, I'm a little bit of a nerd about this, but like I understand the argument that 2% inflation or really low inflation consistently it spurs growth. It does make it makes people want to go ahead and
It might be
spend their money.
inevitable in certain economic systems.
Possibly, yeah. And deflation can turn into a deflationary spiral. That's true too.
Yeah.
But that's not an excuse for the government to print money to pay to their preferred groups or to big companies when they're printing money at 0% interest, which they did for a decade after 2008. They gave it to the banks at 0% interest rates. Yes, the savings was passed on to the people. You could get a mortgage for 3% at the best rates, but still, they were giving that money to the banks. The banks were buying stocks, buying things. They were buying stuff that was going to go up in value that was not dollars. And that turns into a massive transfer of wealth from the population, because they still have to pay taxes, to the richest.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. At 30% in 3 years is a lot different
That's
than maybe
huge.
2% in a year.
Yes, that's huge. And
Well, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say they also make it as difficult as possible to escape inflation. So, for example, the fact that capital gains are not indexed for inflation, I believe, is criminal. Let's say you decide that the dollar is going to start to crash. You're not going to be able to retain the value of your savings, so you go and buy stock. Okay, so let's say the value of the dollar gets cut in half. Therefore, your stock doubles in value, even though no actual wealth was gained. When you sell that to get your value back, that half that you increased, or that 100% increase, which was really just keeping up with inflation, is taxed as if it's profit.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. I agree. That's a good policy.
I mean,
Yeah, thank you. Let's get that in Project 2025.
Let's go, baby.
We had Paul Dans, I think his name was, for Project 2025, and he brought us a bag and a mug. And so they're at our studio sitting around. So I'm just
great.
excited for when the liberals come, and only a couple have, and it's just like the prominently displayed.
Did they
I hope
give you, though,
see-
the special Project 2025 cage that they're going to lock all the liberals in and all that?
Well,
It's not a cage, it's an Iron Maiden.
The Iron Maiden guillotine.
Yeah, there were 3 Iron Maidens, but the truck couldn't get into the driveway, so we just unfortunately.
That's fair.
Yeah, I love the Project 2025 paranoid delusional state, because actually I looked through Project 2025 and it's a lot of it doesn't go that far.
No.
And I was like, some of these things are like, we need reform. I can't remember exactly what it was, but like reforms in the Department of Education. I was like, we want to get rid of that one.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like reforms in this department, and I'm like, we want to get rid of those too.
Well, I think their income tax restructuring or readjustment for the brackets is a very reasonable policy. If you've actually looked at it, it would cut taxes for people making, between $47,000 and $168,000 per year, which is a huge subsection of the middle class and even some wealthier people. Then above $168K, some people's taxes actually go up a little bit. But the point is, what it does is it creates a 15% and a 30% tax bracket. And anyone making less than 168K per year pays 15%. Any income you have above that gets taxed at 30%. That would cut taxes for a lot of the middle class. It's more reasonable than a flat tax is, because right now we can't afford that, just because if we want to keep revenue up, because flat tax would raise taxes on the lower class or a lot. So Project 2025 has a very reasonable...
No. It's terrible. It's terrible. I completely disagree. I'm in favor of a progressive tax.
Of course.
Where we only tax progressives.
Yeah, that's good. The one area I thought Project 2025 went too far was deporting all the lesbians to Bolivia, which is on page 52. That was too much.
It says to Lesbos. They want to send them to Lesbos.
The Greek island.
Yeah. You do know that's where the word comes from.
Yes, yeah.
What is really rich,
and I've been there, and it is...
How was it?
Flannels everywhere.
Migrants.
Subarus. It's all you can drive.
Refugee camps, paranoia, crime, and I walked to the shore and watched, like, refugees... If you can call, I think they're economic migrants largely, but some refugees literally swim on the shore and walk up and walk past me.
Yeah. And you just saw the ships importing flannel and Subarus and jean jackets,
Saturns
from China.
Saturn.
It's rich because conservatives are laying out their Project 2025. This is exactly what they were trying to do. But as opposed to the Kamala Harris campaign, where it's like, we really don't have any idea of what you're trying to do.
They didn't have a platform on their website.
Nothing.
For months.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Brat Coconut Tree. Excuse me.
Brat
Coconut Tree. Yeah.
I think I could finally dance along to that song now.
Isn't it crazy that Brat Summer didn't actually take with working class voters?
Yeah, losing the Rust Belt is so Brat.
Brat.
Yeah, the whole Brat thing just seemed so contrived. Yeah. I think that was the issue with basically your whole campaign.
Everything.
It was, I love Doritos. I'm full of joy. Like, if people who tell you several times a day that they're really filled with joy, I think 100% of the time you can count on not very joyful people.
Mm-hmm. Do you think Joe Biden would have fared better?
Yes.
And how much?
I don't think he would have won, but I think he would have fared better. I thought
one
from
of the
the
Rust
beginning.
Belt states.
Yes, yeah. Of course, he's Joe Biden. Look, he's in
Scranton,
decline.
too,
He's from Scranton. He tells us constantly. But Joe Biden, whatever you want to say about him, guy's a pretty good politician. The guy got elected to the Senate before it was conconstitutionally eligible. Okay?
Only guy to beat Trump.
Only guy to,
allegedly.
Some say, yeah. And the guy is pretty impressive. He's been in national politics for over half a century. So you're a Democrat strategist. You think, I know what we'll do. We'll boot this guy out because he's a little slower. By the way, Joe Biden, I say this in charity to him, was never the brightest bulb in the pack. So he was always good at glad-handing and simpering. And you think, okay, we're going to replace that guy with a woman who no one has ever expressed any affection for. How's that going to turn out?
Who in the primary was at most single digits when she ran in 2020?
So I don't normally play longer YouTube videos, but someone sent me this. Shout out to Tommy. And this is the video where David Pakman is talking about the collapse of the left. It's 7 minutes long. I don't know if I'll play the whole thing, and I've not heard what he has to say. But we're going to play a little bit because I'd like to get an unfiltered view of what leftists, liberals think is currently happening after Trump's victory.
I'm going to tell you something that is terrifying me.
It's that mustache.
I always try to come here and put a positive face on everything, but there is something going on that is terrifying me. When I woke up this morning, we had lost 5,000 YouTube subscribers compared to where we were last night. Now, the first thing I thought was, is this a glitch? We've been on YouTube for 15 years or something like that. And subscribers always just go up. They just never go down. They go up. Is something wrong with my channel? Is someone attacking my channel?
Well, something is wrong with your channel. Yeah. It's the misinformation.
I think it's the content.
Going on. So I started texting. And I texted Brian Tyler Cohen. And I texted Tyler Cohen and Brian Cohen and Brian Tyler, all of them. I texted all of them. I texted Jesse Dollemore. I texted Luke Beasley and Farron Cousins and Sam Cedar. And every single one of our channels since last night is hemorrhaging subscribers.
Wow.
What is it?
Saying screw it, I'm out.
Bro, why would you admit that?
Look at this for 2 seconds. Look at this tiny little...
I just want to mention that, and keep that chart up because it'll help me make my point. This is the scumbag who, after Christian children were murdered by a trans shooter was joking about it on Twitter, saying, oh, I guess their prayers didn't work. That was the attitude he had about little Christian kids getting killed.
Yeah.
And then he loses 5,000 subscribers, and look how somber he is. Oh, this is horrible. I try to put a positive spin on things, but this is just too much for my little heart to bear.
I think it's fake. I don't think the left is real. I sincerely believe this. And I'll tell you why. When Elon Musk announced that he was going to purchase Twitter, what did we see? Overnight, somehow, channels that were associated with the right saw massive gains in follower count, and on the left started bleeding subscribers like crazy. There was no legitimate explanation for the massive shift other than they had their thumb on the scales, and once they found out they were facing an internal review or an external review, they took the thumb off.
Yeah.
Same thing happened again when Elon formally took over. Once again, prominent personalities like these people started losing tons of followers. My theory was that social media companies know I forgot what it's called. It's an internet law that any sufficiently unmoderated forum will become right wing. I don't know if it's 4chan's law or something like this. And so I believe that what happens is these big social media companies are like, hey, look at X. It shifts to the right. Look at YouTube. We have to go in there and force it to be middle of the road.
Yeah.
Which basically means we're going to ban conservatives and prop up liberals.
Yep.
So what is David Pakman actually seeing? I believe it's probably fake accounts. Now that the election is over, the fake accounts that were being used to prop up his channels to make it look like there was support for the left are no longer being funded properly, and they're shutting down. I don't know that that's true. I'm just saying it like this. During the election, the left wants to make liberalism and leftism and these politicians look prominent, and they use bots to prop accounts up. Once the money is gone, because they're massively in debt and they've lost, poof.
Yeah.
The followers are gone.
I noticed that in the height of the Republican primary even, and then I especially saw it up through the general, just on X even. I'd see you get flooded with all these really nasty comments, and there's always some nasty comments, but it really spikes. And then I'll tell you, after election night, my nasty comments on X, and by the way, I have been kind of mean on X. I've actually increased the vitriol. Yeah. But the nasty comments from the left, supposedly, more or less disappeared, probably dropped 80%.
I have said some of the most horrible things imaginable on X.
I've mostly just retweeted predictions that I bookmarked. All right, from left-wing people.
Right.
Let's hear from David
I'll
a little
tell
bit
you
more.
after the
As
show.
you can see, subscribers just go up, 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 and they are down. It is not just YouTube subscribers. We are seeing record cancellations of paid memberships.
Wow.
Record cancellations.
Dave, you should
These
pray
are the
about it. You
people
should
that
try
keep
praying.
the show running. Now, for a moment, I thought, if it's just YouTube, maybe YouTube is purging people who are inactive subscribers. And once a year, usually YouTube does this, and you see a little decline, and then numbers go back up. They're not doing it. They're not doing it. And if that were the case, we wouldn't be seeing paid membership cancellations on the website. So now I understand what is going on. It's terrifying, but it is happening. A lot of people are checking out.
No, I still think it's bots. I think that his memberships may have been largely fake. And I'm not trying to be a dick and dig at David Pakman. I genuinely think that bots go after everybody. I believe that everybody has a degree of bots attacking their accounts for some reason or another.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think there's a large amount. Paid memberships is interesting. That's less likely to be fake. So I do think there's probably a lot of people checking out. I believe that component is that David has been misinforming people, and they realized it last night when they said, how am I in the minority? I thought we were going to have the popular vote, at least, even if Trump won. They realized I'm on the wrong side of history, and these people are genuinely terrified of being on the wrong side of history. That's why the activists chant on the streets to police officers and small businesses, you're on the wrong side of history. So what do you think a liberal who's scared of that is thinking when they wake up and said, David Pakman is the wrong side of history and he led me astray?
I think that it's just a matter of people are kind of realizing that men can't become women. And the left has been leading people astray. The left doesn't have policies that people like.
But you know what really hit him too? I mean, I agree with that, and I think that was so glaring to a lot of people. But even beyond that, Trump won the popular vote, which doesn't matter legally, but it matters because it took away the one big talking point that they had. Well, this is the real democracy was, no, actually most people voted for Trump. And then the fact that black men disproportionately voted for Trump and Hispanics disproportionately voted for Trump and even women started moving. Because of that, what are they supposed to conclude? There's no good oppressor narrative anymore on any front. So I think in as much as they are capable of introspection, I think they had to come to the conclusion, yikes, maybe I've been looking at this a little bit wrong.
I am interested to hear what he has to say further.
I heard anecdotally from a couple dozen people who said, David, I just can't do it anymore. I just can't do it. I'm checking out. I'm out. Bye. And the reason that this is terrifying, not only because it puts everybody in left-wing media's livelihoods at stake and at risk, it terrifies me because our instinct is the opposite of what the right does, and we will get crushed if this is the way we respond to a defeat.
Hear, hear.
The right wants us not to exist. The right wants to decimate independent progressive media.
No, they don't.
And so when I lose
really
5,000
support free speech.
Brian
Can I
loses
just point out, this guy's got 2.64 million followers and he lost 5,000 and he's having a breakdown over it.
Yeah.
I have told you guys this. You watch the show. What did I say? Whenever you see a YouTuber make a video where they're like, oh, woe is me, I'm so miserable, you can usually look at their numbers and see like they lost subscribers or viewers or something like that.
I agree.
I got a cup you can cry into here.
Should we send it over?
And bring a
I think it's embarrassing, dude. It's embarrassing
and
when
everybody's
right-wingers
losing
do it,
thousands
too.
of subscribers. Understand that when the right loses, they get organized, they fund, and they create insanely effective organizations like Turning Point USA.
Here we go.
Investing in the Daily Wire and building out this huge network of right-wing ideas and influencers.
This guy's making a lot of sense.
If you're feeling burnt out,
Maybe I'll subscribe.
I encourage you, take a break until the inauguration. It's months, okay? Mental health break, do it. But when we start canceling the subscriptions,
but don't take my money away.
An algorithmic desubscription spiral right now, because when people start unsubscribing on YouTube, YouTube thinks, we probably shouldn't recommend this content because it's generating a lot of unsubscribes.
Right.
So then the content doesn't get recommended.
Yeah.
And then the message doesn't get out. And then next election, they win by even more.
Yes,
that's right.
So
there's one thing you said that's not true.
Understand
a lot of
instinct. But if we cede ground to them, they crush us everywhere. Now, we're up against a MAGA Supreme Court potentially till 2050. We'll talk about that later. We're up against a completely uninhibited Trump. I actually have an entire chapter in my forthcoming book, The Echo Machine, about exactly this. It's the introduction. In the introduction, I explain how it's disgusting to me. It's disgusting. To me
Oh, he's selling his
that
book
when you
now.
engage in politics,
he's losing subscribers.
First, you've got to convince people climate change is even happening. You can't just find solutions because half the country doesn't even accept the science of vaccines.
You have to.
David, I just want to mention when the people who are claiming climate change is happening buy beachfront properties that are supposed to be underwater in 20 to 30 years, it's really hard to trust them.
It's rich of him to fearmonger about Daily Wire and Turning Point USA as though they have more influence than the media dominated by the leftists. CNN, MSNBC, the Young Turks.
I'll tell you what.
The Daily Beast.
Also,
I could go on all
make
day.
the point in the book that if you actually care about the world for ourselves, children, grandchildren, other people, families, friends, people we care about, when you disengage because they've gotten so extreme, you cede ground to them and you say, do whatever you want. I'm disengaging, do whatever you want. And we really can't do that, okay? So my request to you today is...
give me more money.
Please resubscribe to the YouTube channel. Man. All of a sudden, in 12, 14 hours, the entire progressive media ecosystem is under a threat I have never seen before. We've never seen anything like that.
And the threat is accountability.
I love how his rationale is, you only subscribed because you are tired, not because you dislike me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me tell you that I learned this when I was a kid. The opposite of love is not hate; it's indifference.
Yeah.
And what you learn is, David, if people don't love you and they're indifferent, they don't unsubscribe. They just leave and they say nothing. But if people are unsubscribing, it sounds more like they hate you.
Well, I don't even necessarily know that we have to go that far. The reality is he's losing subscribers right now. But part of what I find particularly funny about that is, listen, in 2020, the Republicans lost the election. I felt no need to tell my subscribers to take a mental health break from my channel.
Yeah.
I never felt the need to tell my subscribers, I know you guys need a break from me right now after all of this.
I first see a TYT and a Kasparian type plight here, transformation for Pacman in a decade.
Let's see what else
I
he's
think
got.
they're going to be in shambles.
This is the moment where we have to support independent progressive media. If it's not my show, that's fine. Okay, there's plenty of shows you can support. Consider getting a membership. Consider it. We have a code. The new coupon code is not again. All one word.
No, but that's to his channel. What about the other channel?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to stress. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if those videos from Trump are new actually.
6 minutes ago.
But yeah, he's got a bunch of those on his website. Everyone keeps reposting them as if they're new, but we'll check. I don't blame Pacman at all for doing any kind of become a member, subscribe to my channel, buy my book. I respect all of that. I don't respect him saying, "Heavens to Betsy, I'm losing followers. This is the apocalypse." He could have just said, I know, he didn't even say anything. He could have saw the numbers. He could have made a video being like, now's the time for us to redouble our efforts.
But you know why he's saying it's the apocalypse? This gets to something you just said, which is the lie was, if you don't subscribe to the David Pacman channel, the message of the left won't get out. It's ridiculous because the left controls all of the institutions and the whole media. However, beyond David Pacman, we were talking the other night about how the New York Times and the Washington Post obviously are coordinating to point out that all of us are eating their lunch. For the first time probably ever, we have more influence than the establishment media on an election. That's why the Washington Post called it the podcast election. So I do think part of the freak out here is, one, I don't know, maybe he's got car payments he can't afford. But the other part of the freak out is, oh, wow, maybe we can't count on a monopoly in the media. Maybe the right actually broke through, and maybe the right's message is a lot more popular and manifestly more truthful. Oh, this actually could be the collapse of the whole house of cards.
What strikes me is the complete lack of reflection on anything about why so many people may have decided to vote for Trump. There's no sense of curiosity from him to talk about the issues that resonated with so many Americans, and they're so out of touch. Yeah. He's part of the left that is just completely out of touch with the average normal American.
I think that the fact that they're freaking out about this is probably... Okay. It's probably indicative of the fact that it's probably related to the fact that there was such a sweep, right? So he sees Tuesday happen, Trump's back, which they thought couldn't happen. They didn't believe it for a second. So much so that they actually ran Kamala Harris, right, and tried to shove that down the American people's throat. Then there was also the Senate and looks like the House and all of the right-leaning all the people that moved so far right. And now he sees that there's also a massive exodus, or what seems to him like a massive exodus from all of these left-wing accounts. Maybe he actually does have a point and he has something to be afraid of, because maybe the American people have said, you know what? We tried this for the past 12 of the past 16 years have been Democrats in control and running the show and Democrat policies. And we have ended up poorer. We have ended up with wars, two wars, even though Barack Obama was supposed to come in and it was supposed to be the guy of peace. He won the Nobel Peace Prize right away. And he might have even got it before he actually got into office, but he definitely got it very, very early, like right when he got into office. He got it for just being not George Bush.
Right.
And we had no significant change. What happened was all of the people that historically had been considered friends of the Republicans became friends of the Democrats. The Democrats ran everything, and there was nothing that was better about today than there was in 1999.
Yeah. And also, don't forget, with independent left-wing media, they have tried this before. They tried Air America to be their Rush Limbaugh. And to get back to that article we're reading at the top, it completely flopped. It was a
right.
total failure. So there is left-wing media because the left took over the established institutions, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the news networks that have federal licenses. But in terms of when you actually have a free market and you don't have the left monopolizing control, even on the platforms, which give priority and advantage to the left and punish us for saying normal things, well, when you start to crack that a little bit and you actually create a market, maybe there just isn't much of a market for the David Pakman show.
So I want to just shout this out. It looks like Carrie Lake might actually win.
Wow. Really?
So now hold on. Don't get your hopium up.
Yeah.
Right now she's down 43,000. I got this tweet from Charlie Kirk. He says Maricopa has 500,000 votes outstanding, but the latest drop was 57% for Carrie. If the next drop that comes in is 51, is at least 51 for Carrie Lake, she wins. Whoa. With 500,000 votes remaining, he says. AZ has 850,000 votes outstanding statewide. If those votes that come in break at least 51% for Carrie Lake, she wins.
So that gives us 53 senators.
53. And then you have with Sam Brown, there are people saying they want to see a lawsuit over the late ballots to challenge them.
I certainly would like to see that.
But then you have the question about late ballots for AZ. So it may just split and say, well, look, you get Carrie Lake or you get.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the state laws are, Arizona to Nevada. The one thing I know about Nevada, though, is that Harry Reid I would say blessed memory. Let's hope blessed memory. Harry Reid had built a machine that is quite enduring. So I frankly, there's corruption in a lot of different places. I'm skeptical about Nevada because that guy had built a pretty corrupt machine. I'd like a lawsuit, and I really like Sam Brown, and I think he'd be a great senator.
Yeah. So that's the latest. Should we just watch what the rest of what he has to say?
Sure. The dread that we are all feeling.
Oh yeah, not us.
Consider
we're
getting a membership.
Joy.
If you want to understand what happened.
Well, guys, he's completely right. People, if you are listening, consider getting a membership at timcast.com right now, because now more than ever, we're gonna keep going.
And I outline it in the book, The Echo Machine. Please pre-order the book. There is the assumption you can't have a successful independent nonfiction book unless you have like CNN or MSNBC behind you. I want to prove that wrong. This book will also explain what it is that we are dealing with and how you defend against it historically.
Just like he explained what was going to happen in the election, right?
We'll take a break and get to some other things. There has never been a movement.
Okay, I just want to say, I want to give a massive shout out to this guy. He is a salesman, you know?
Yeah.
He didn't make this video because he's terrified. He said, he woke up one day and they were like, oh, hey, Dave, we're down 5K subs. And he goes, really? I'm going to make a video where I act like it's the apocalypse to rally paid memberships and subscribers and sell my book.
Well, speaking of salesmen, I just got to say, Michael, the cigar was fantastic.
Stop it. Thank you
it was
so
really
much.
Very good.
Thank you.
Wouldn't it be great if you sold more cigars tonight than he gets memberships?
You know,
for the show?
I actually feel confident that I will do that. But the other difference, first of all, let's not forget, Timcast is what made my book, which did accurately explain things, unlike David Pakman's. It did make my book speechless. It really helped it get to #1 nationally. But the difference here is, David Pakman is trying to sell you some book that's going to whine and complain and probably give you false wisdom. However, my cigars, they're not trying to shove any message on you. Victories. I've kept my show on the air while skirting around all sorts of rules. And it's my understanding that as long as you don't send people to any websites or anything, I think you're good. Now, David Pakman could sell whatever cocaine or whatever kind of crazy drugs that he's on that give him his crazy ideas. But I think everyone's okay to celebrate.
I have to apologize to everybody. I was left speechless.
Wow. That was good.
Oh, man. Just like your book, and everyone is getting us in the super chats. But yeah.
You know, it's funny he's saying this too, because the last time Trump was elected president, left-wing media actually, it was the most lucrative time to be involved in left-wing media, and they made more money than they ever did, based off of fear-mongering off of Donald Trump. Yeah. So while he's crying crocodiles here now, I'm sure the Trump administration, the next 4 years of Trump, will actually be very lucrative for him and many people on the left. unfortunately.
Well, how about we go to Super Chat? So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with everyone you know, become a member at timcast.com. We have a Discord server. David Packman, I respect him calling for memberships. He's trying to build up his business. He wants to make content for you. He was very wrong. I think he's very wrong on a lot of things, but I can respect that we're all in this game where, I don't really trust the guy, but competition in politics is important. Well, on our side, we have a Discord server with tens of thousands of people, and you can be a member and meet new people and get involved in the movement. A lot of people are working on new projects. We have pre-shows, after shows, and every day the members of the Discord say, please shout it out so we can get more people to come hang out because they want to be your friend. And we also have members-only shows. We're not doing it this week. The only reason I can speak right now is because I took ibuprofen to reduce the swelling in my throat because I'm losing my voice. 9-hour streams and continual, 4 hour, 5 hours of recording will do that. In addition to not sleeping very much and probably not drinking enough water. But we'll keep the show going for you.
Not drinking nearly enough booze either, I find.
No, none for me. None for me.
Zero booze.
But tomorrow's going to be great. We have General Flynn. He's going to be on the Culture War podcast at youtube.com/Timcast. And I'm very much looking forward to asking him about Trump's revenge. And maybe his. But we'll see. We'll grab some super chats. We've got I'm Not Your Buddy Guy. America is suffering from a massive mental health crisis. Make asylums great again. Well, wasn't Reagan who got rid of him?
Reagan was part of it. He gets a lot of the blame for it. At the time, though, they got rid of him because there were all these psych drugs that made people think they didn't need to be in the asylum.
Yeah.
However, turns out when you let a bunch of people out and then you don't force them to take their psych meds, they stop taking them and they go crazy and they wind up homeless.
They take the psych meds until they feel better. They feel better. They think I'm cured. They stop taking the psych meds and then they go crazy again.
Yeah.
I hope Trump makes New York great again because we are greatly dealing with the scourge of homelessness and mental illness in our city.
Yes, but Elaad, he would be making New York great again. Because
That's true,
New
yeah.
York was great. It fell into chaos. He comes in the 80s. He starts building up these luxury towers. He along with many others, were part of this reformation and reduction in crime that made the city better. And now it desperately needs help again.
Yep.
And you turn MSG into MAGA Square Garden once again.
MAGA Square Garden.
Also, I just want to point out one of the beautiful things about this election was that New York came closer to going to Trump than Florida did to going for Harris. There were Democrats saying that Florida was in play. Kamala
Kyle
got
Kalinske
beat.
said it.
Yeah.
That's why they're unsubscribing,
Right.
idiots.
They're like, you told me Iowa was going to go for Democrats. And then they were like, Trump won every swing state. Look, I've been to all these protests. The leftists and the liberals march and they go, you're on the wrong side of history. The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching. And I'm like, guess what? The majority of this country thinks you are on the wrong side of history. This is what terrifies them. Understand, we know about liberal and leftist projection. Oh, no, Trump's going to start rounding up his political opponents. They're saying that because they're doing it. And now they're worried it'll happen to them. When they chant you're on the wrong side of history, they're telling you their greatest fear. The reason why so many liberals, I shouldn't even say liberals, but regular people don't speak up, they stand back and they keep their mouths shut and let all the bad stuff happen, is because they're worried that they're going to be in the minority. Well, guess what? That's why I've been screeching for the past couple of weeks. The popular vote is the most important thing we get. Well, it's not the most important. Obviously, Trump having power is.
Yeah.
But we need the popular vote because it terrifies the weak-willed liberals. Yeah. They are now the wrong side of history. That's why I've been tweeting it to everyone. Harry Sisson, Dean Withers, whatever they say, I just say you're on the wrong side of history.
By the way, this was a big part of why Trump did that MSG rally. It's the only Trump rally that I've been able to make it to, and I made a specific point to go because I thought it was so bold, it was so brazen. And I thought, why is he campaigning in New York? First of all, it was an amazing show, but it was pretty clear then. This guy was making a play not only to win in the Electoral College, he was making a play to win the popular vote. And it worked.
Absolutely. It worked. And that popular vote helps give him a mandate and credibility to move forward with his agenda here.
Amen. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. I just love that they don't have that complaint this time. I wouldn't have cared if they did. Yeah. Right? Because every single time a Republican wins the presidential election and they don't get the popular vote, the left goes, he won at chess, but what about checkers? Yeah. That's not the game we're playing right now.
Also, if they played the popular vote game, then Trump would just campaign in California and New York, and he'd win the popular vote by a lot, which he did.
Well, this is the BS thing people used to reject him as president, too, when he won last time. And I'm just glad they don't have that BS to hold their hat on this time as well.
Wyatt Kaldenberg says, Governor Shapiro has been cracking down on the Amish. Normally, they don't vote. A gay man named Scott met with them and got many to vote to stop their persecution. This could make a great American movie.
That could. You know, there's a lot here that's kind of, improbable. If you ask someone 20 years ago, like, hey, will the host of The Apprentice go on the show of the host of Fear Factor and have that be a major political event? And then will the host of The Apprentice, the billionaire playboy, bring peace to the Middle East? All of those things happen.
That's great. My pitch for Seamus is a cartoon where it's a guy on the side of the road, like all haggard and homeless, shaking, and it's the year 2003, and he's like, or it's like 2009. He's like, the guy from the reality TV show, the most popular on NBC, is going to go on the other reality TV shows. Guys, big show. It's the biggest show in the world, the biggest show everybody's watching. And he's going to say, you should be the president. And then he wins the presidency. And they're going to be like, calm down, sir.
Yeah,
we did
take those meds.
We did a cartoon a few months ago about a time traveler, and he goes back to the year 2008. He's like, J.K. Rowling is leading a genocide. And everyone's like, the children's author? Like, and it's just a liberal saying, like, liberal talking points from today to people in 2008. And they're like, this guy's, he says he's from the future, right? Like, this guy's a lunatic. He's like, they're giving sex changes to children. They're like, okay.
Donald Trump is going to be president. And they're like, oh, jeez. All right. Sea Cowboy says, with the greater Idaho movement gaining more traction, I would like to propose a greater West Virginia movement involving Western Virginia. You wouldn't even have to change the state names. Western Maryland has already written letters asking West Virginia to annex them. This is a couple years ago.
To liberate them.
Oh, dude. The Western Panhandle of Maryland is MAGA country. Wow. MAGA country. Sorry, I pronounced it wrong. You go to these bars, these restaurants. We drove a couple hours in the Western Panhandle, went to a bar, and they had the picture of Donald Trump riding the Velociraptor with machine guns. And I'm like, this is a blue state.
This is why the Republicans need Dick Cheney back, is because we need Cheney to send the F-16s into Maryland to liberate the West Maryland people from oppression.
The F-16s can't do it. You need ground troops. We're gonna need to mobilize the West Virginia. No, they don't actually have the state army. No, it'll be. They'll welcome us as liberators.
Mm-hmm. They will. They truly will.
Well, owning property in Maryland, there's a big sign that's like it's like 20 feet, and it says swamp this 40 miles that way. And the guy, he's one of our neighbors. He lives near, and he's got these huge signs saying Trump, and it's
great.
That was our old studio, by the way, in Maryland. But yeah, it is definitely MAGA country. All right, let's go. An Orange Sea Line says the election has been wild. Thank you, Trump. I wish you would have left these lefties speechless, just like the #1 bestseller by Michael Knowles.
You know, the Timcast listeners, and specifically the super chatters, are the most wonderfully, obsessively one-minded people in the world, and I am so grateful for it. Thank you.
Well, when we had Clavin on the other day, he's talking about his book, and I was like, you need to turn your book into a meme that everyone wants to be a part of, because we still get super chats periodically that sell your book.
My book from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago.
And sometimes people will do it because it's a throwback joke,
right.
And then I start reading the super chat, and halfway through it turns into an advertisement for your book.
This is the other
you can
great
see the spikes when it happens.
The other great return it's the opposite of what Pac-Man sees. The other great return for Trump is the return of the glorious, beautiful memes. They're back.
The crystals meme. What is this?
The crystals meme?
Yeah, Trump. There's images of Trump trapping liberals in crystals.
Yeah, listen. That one's a little deep for me. I got to go back through my Renee Girard to totally understand that kind of mimesis.
I've seen a bunch of it. Seamus made the joke on his video the other day where I think it's his best video. And I'm in some of them and should praise the ones I'm in. But in this one, it's the guy working out with Peanut the squirrel, and then SWAT cops come in and a guy with a machine gun fires, and then Trump uses telekinesis to stop the bullet and save Peanut's life. And then it turns out the cop is Kamala Harris. And so she's like, I was just following orders. And he goes, then I order you into the crystals. And then she transports into a crystal screaming. So apparently someone posted this image where they were like, liberals spending 10,000 years in the crystals might do them good or something like this.
Huh.
And it was a picture of like a Wojak character in a crystal screaming. So then everyone started making jokes about Trump. When he wins, he's going to transport liberals into crystals to imprison them for 10,000 years.
And that is in Project 2025, too, actually. Yeah. Did you guys see at the Kamala concession speech that you want to tell me somebody doesn't believe in God? Explain this to me. At the Kamala concession speech, right as they're setting up the stage, a cute little squirrel bears a striking resemblance to Peanut, truly a blessed memory. You telling me that was just by accident? Come on.
So people are pointing out as an Elder Scroll meme. I don't believe that is correct. So I've played Elder Scrolls. When you defeat someone in Elder Scrolls, you can trap their soul in a soul gem and then use it for crafting things like this, or use it for whatever.
Okay.
That's not the same as imprisoning someone in crystals for 10,000 years, but people started to associate Elder Scrolls with the meme. Either way, it's hilarious to see these AI-generated photos where Trump is like hovering over crystals and there's people trapped inside of them.
It's great.
The memes are great. And I want to stress this to you. Peanut was assassinated.
He was assassinated.
But I'm not...
It was a targeted... He was famous.
He was a public
theory,
figure.
my conspiracy theory is he's still alive, and they're laughing at us. That's why they had him run across the stage.
Hiding in Tora Bora somewhere.
What is an assassination but a politically motivated killing of a prominent figure?
Yeah.
So powerful business leaders can be assassinated. Peanut the Squirrel had 2 million followers, and I believe, this is my opinion, it's a conspiracy theory, the reason the state came and took Fred and Peanut was because they were concerned that a high-profile account with millions of followers would spawn copycats. People would be like, I can get followers too if I get a squirrel, and then you have the potential for actual rabies, because people will go for wild squirrels. And even though Peanut was raised in a home indoor and totally fine, their attitude was probably, look, if you seize the squirrel, he's going to sue you and get it back. You have to kill it. And so they killed Peanut to prevent a movement of people wanting squirrels as
Better
pets.
that one squirrel should die for the community. This is a Pharisaical line of thinking from New York State, but it's a fair point. Also, you mentioned Fred. This reminds me of C.S. Lewis dying the same day as John F. Kennedy. Nobody really talks about Fred, okay? Was Fred not worth?
He was
the raccoon. Exactly. You don't even know. Nobody knows.
Or Mother
They
Teresa and
claimed-
Princess Diana dying the same week, right?
Who did?
Mother Teresa and Princess Diana.
Wow.
Yeah.
They claimed that Fred and Peanut bit somebody, and so they had to do a brain necropsy or whatever it's called, for rabies. And I'm like, oh, how convenient. The two animals you were seizing just happened to bite you.
Also, if I were Peanut, I'd bite those guys too. What are they doing in my house?
I mean, that is plausible, right? A bunch of strange guys come in and try grabbing the squirrel, and it's going to bite them.
Yeah.
And then, but I think it was intentional. I think when you look at social media and all of these histrionic women are posting videos of themselves crying, they're doing it because it's a social media trend. And the state said, look, just like people all do the same dance. Remember the coconut dance that the women were doing for Kamala? They will start buying
That
squirrels.
didn't work. That's
coconut
crazy.
dance?
That's
Well, that is
crazy.
what a meme is. That is like literally
Right.
what mimesis is you just start imitating the behaviors and desires of people. So I actually think you're totally right about that. Whether New York State needed to devote resources while homeless people are like terrorizing women on the subway, maybe they could have focused more on that than on the scourge of squirrel TikToks.
Yeah. All right, we got Corey Thomas says Ruben, how do you pronounce it, Gallego? Gallego has more votes against Carrie Lake than Harris on Trump. Yep.
Wow. That
And
checks
everyone's,
out.
yeah. That, and it's these last minute late votes that are coming in.
It's so weird.
So,
the
but I
split-
mean, why
split
would they
ticket.
not want Harris to win in that regard if they're going to cheat for Gallego?
Well, the Trump campaign was pushing the idea, I think rightly, that they needed the margin to be too big to rig.
Yeah.
There are people who are just going to vote top of the
They
ballot.
didn't even need Arizona.
Yeah, that's right.
That
That's
could
right.
be why. They didn't want to create extra liability. So their focus was just, maybe they were thinking, we're not going to move Biden or Harris, so let's focus on as much as we can in the Senate and the House.
Yeah.
Either way, they're losing all of it.
There's a lot going on in Arizona. I feel like there's a lot of split ticketers in Arizona. This was a state that elected John McCain. Wasn't he a senator there for a very long time?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it is. It
the
is a
split ticket
legitimately
stuff
purple.
is so
state.
interesting.
Yeah, and also Trump leading the realignment of the GOP does mean there are going to be people who vote for Trump top of the ticket who are really not Republicans down ballot. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't shenanigans. There very well might be, but it's not unreasonable to think people might have done that.
All right, this one is, I'm going to read to intentionally get Seamus angry.
Oh, no.
Aura says, Michael and Seamus, my home state of Missouri just passed an extreme pro-abortion amendment. What can I do at a local level to fight back?
Crap.
It's a great question. I mean, pray, spread the message, tell people what abortion is, and try to counsel women out of having them.
Yeah, my friend Father Benedict Keeley makes a good point. He does a lot of work with persecuted Christians in the Middle East. And when you say pray, Seamus, people think of prayer as a last resort, like the atheist in the foxhole who starts praying. But prayer is a first resort.
Yeah.
I mean that totally without any cuteness or whatsoever. You know, if you believe that God exists, which I think is demonstrable and inescapable and can be known with certainty from nature through reason.
I agree.
Yes. I mean, I think it's, it's good to hear that because today it's kind of...
Everything came from nothing for no reason.
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I forgot about
come on.
that convincing theory.
Yeah.
But if you really believe that, as I do, that God is real and omnipotent and omnibenevolent and all that, then it is simply rational that your first course ought to be prayer. And then don't forget, prayer ought to impel you to good works.
Right.
But let's take a little bit to entertain this, as it's late in the week. We talk a great deal about politics. And I say this with, call me stupid, call me whatever you want. Most of the conversations I have with people who are atheists, they can't get over the idea that in their mind, they think when you say God, there's a guy in a white robe flying around like Superman. Yeah. And when I try to explain things like, okay, let's before we even get to the concept of God, let's talk about the fourth dimension and tesseracts. The human mind cannot comprehend what a tesseract looks like, yet we know mathematically it exists. They're like, nope, flying guy in the sky. Yeah. And I was like, you need to get beyond the idea that God himself is as limited as a human is.
Yeah.
But I understand why they're atheists if that's where their mind is stuck.
Yeah.
They're like, that's not possible.
And in fairness to them, they are actually caught up in what is called a scandal to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. They're caught up in the scandal of the incarnation, the fact that God also is a man. They're caught up in the central mystery of the faith, which is the Trinity, and they're trying to make sense of it. Which there was a popular.
Real quick, put a second. I'm saying even outside of Christianity.
Yeah.
The concept of God this is actually fascinating. It's a great point. Most of the people I meet who are atheists do have a Christian view of God.
Yes, of course. It's a Christian civilization, so that's why they're coming to this. And I happen to believe that is correct. And so I understand that it is a stumbling block to some, and it's foolishness to others. But it's also true, and it tells you so much more about your human nature. Because you could even start to argue with atheists from the perspective of human nature. Like, for instance, how do we know anything? How do we know that things are true? How do we reason? How do we have intellect? If the world is just like stuff and we're all just meat puppets, then meaningful speech is not possible. That's right. So, they behave every day, every minute of every day, as if God exists. Yeah. They just can't get themselves to admit it, I suppose.
They work off
we'd
the
be
values.
Speechless. We'd be speechless.
That's such a great point, Seamus.
Thank you.
And a great book.
Yeah.
I think they work on values that are downstream from religion while rejecting the religion at its base and its core. So a lot of their ideals, they value things like the ideals of the Ten Commandments while not buying into the religion that
right. But
has anyone here ever been or considered themselves an atheist or
I was for 10 years.
There was a time in my life where I was in such severe doubt that I would consider myself an atheist. I think probably around the time that I was like 18, 19 years old.
Many such cases. Yeah. I mean, that happens, especially to young men, especially in this day and age. Mm-hmm. But I think the other thing that we don't talk about a lot, because it's not as intellectual and philosophical, I think a lot of the reason these guys insist on saying they're atheists is just because they sin a lot and really enjoy sinning and don't want to feel bad about it.
Yeah,
just sin darkens the intellect.
That's kind of where I was too. I mean, at that age, there are so many like complex philosophical arguments that sound robust and intellectual that people have tried to make against God, but the most convincing one to me was always like not sinning is hard.
It's hard, and it feels good to sin if you're caught up in vice.
For me, it was just learning about physics. And I feel that I've done a lot of videos about it. I could have a 3-hour sit-down explanation where I would love to sit with a physicist and talk about how, at minimum, mathematical probability suggests the existence of a God.
Yeah.
And then I actually believe observable science and in every discipline leads us to a conclusion that I would say is beyond probability. It's nearly 1. It's 99.9999%. And I know right now it's going to be very difficult for a lot of people who are atheists to be like, well, he's not explaining anything, so I don't believe him. That's fine. I'm not going to go into a 3-hour explanation. But if you're trying to start to look into what I'm talking about, research entropy and negative entropy, read about complex dynamic systems and the tendencies of matter in life towards the creation of complex systems. And that ultimately leads you to one conclusion, that complex dynamic systems increase exponentially beyond our comprehension, which at minimum, from a human perspective, suggests the existence of a God. Mm-hmm. If you follow that math to its conclusion, it's God.
No, I think you're right that the logical conclusion of all of these different fields of study is religiosity. I can't remember who said this, but he said the first sip of the glass from the natural sciences gets you to atheism, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting.
Yes.
On top of that, I mean, the very foundation of these fields is also something that's based in a belief in God. You have to have some kind of supernatural worldview, whether you acknowledge it or not, to believe that the universe is comprehensible to human beings in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, of course. My buddy Spencer just wrote this great. I'll plug a book that's not my own. He just came out with this great book, Light of the Mind, Light of the World, which makes all of these points, and it does so beautifully. But Ross Douthat, the conservative who writes for the New York Times, the one guy, he, in a column that was promoting that book, he pointed out something that had escaped me, which is that fashionable atheism that got a lot of us, I think, when we were younger, that fashionable atheism did not come about as a result of arguments or the development of thinking. Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, it came about because of specific historical events. 9/11, for one, which was exploited. The radicalism of Islam was exploited, or of some Muslims, was exploited to kill all religion in the public mind. And also the Catholic Church scandal, which was selectively publicized and overstated, but nevertheless, it was a real thing. And so because all these things happened in the early 2000s, people just had this emotional, not rational, but emotional recoiling away from religion. But now that appears to be going away.
Yeah, well, and also after 9/11, blaming religion as a whole rather than just explaining very clearly that this was an issue with Islam was a politically correct way of analyzing the situation.
Yeah.
Right? Whenever radical Muslim terrorists do anything bad, it's all religion that's a problem. Of course, when Christians do something bad, that's a specific doctrinal issue with Christian belief.
Right.
Let's read this from Steven. He says, I'm 23. I voted for Trump in 2020 and again this year. I've been a machinist since 2019. The year I graduated high school. I love this country. God bless the USA. Stephen, thank you for doing your patriotic duty. And more to the point, we need you. Young men of good conscience who do their duties to protect this country. We one day will not be here. And you're only 15 years younger than me. But that means you're going to be here 15 years longer than me, or who knows, maybe a lot longer. And so we need young men and women, especially right now, to hold the line.
Do you think he used to subscribe to the David Pakman channel?
No.
No, I mean, not him. Not him.
I do think there are a lot of people who used to subscribe to him who subscribe here. But, I also hear what I don't believe to be true. People are like, I used to watch Tim Pool, but now I watch David Pakman. I'm like, that's not true.
No way.
I'm like,
sounds fake.
The winds don't blow in that direction, I'm afraid.
I just don't believe it because it's like, what is your issue with the news article that I read? David Pakman had a segment where MSN Meet the Press, I think it's NBC News, Meet the Press, Chuck Todd was talking to Ted Cruz, and they said, do you really think Ukraine interfered in the 2016 election to help Hillary Clinton? And Ted Cruz goes, it was in the news. And then you hear a producer laughing in the background. And then David Pakman goes, I can't believe he believes this. Politico reported this. I bring this article up all the time. Politico reported that Ukraine interfered. Paul Manafort went to jail over this. We know it happened. So when Pakman is lying to people like that, and I can prove it's not true. The other thing is, there was one day where we both had very similar thumbnails. Mine was Donald Trump improves in polls. His was Donald Trump sinks to new low. And I was like, did I get something wrong?
Yeah, one of those has to be correct.
Which one turned out to be correct?
It was simple. I use aggregate polling, not single polling. I said, we want to avoid static. Sometimes there's outliers. He used a single poll showing high unfavorability. And I said, okay, well, he's not wrong. It is true that Trump has tanked in this poll. But if you're a viewer and you're watching his channel and you hear that and you go, wow, then you watch mine and I say, actually, here's all of the polls for the day.
Yeah.
This one was bad, but the rest were good. You go, oh.
One poll said that Kamala was going to win Iowa in a landslide. How did that turn out?
Yep.
Wasn't that a guy from Iowa, like a professional pollster?
No, it was
Ann Selzer.
Ann Selzer. Yeah.
Boy, was she wrong. What did she say? She said that she thinks what happened was that her poll rallied people who were thinking Trump was going to coast to victory.
Well, you know whose prediction wasn't wrong? Moo Dang.
Moo Dang.
Correct. Moo Dang is a better predictor than Alan Lichtman.
Mm-hmm. That's true. What keys does Moo Dang have? Just cakes.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But I want to say this to everybody listening. I am not mad at Alan Lichtman.
No.
I feel bad for him. He's an older guy. His keys are not bad predictors. They've proven successful. The problem is that he watches CNN and he thinks he's being told the truth.
Yeah.
So when they say there's no scandals, there's no military failures, the economy is good.
Trump's not charismatic.
Trump has no charisma. He says, well, Kamala's going to win then. And we beg him, please pay attention to reality. But reality has a right-wing bias, so.
Right. Yeah, the model, if you can call the keys a model, the model was not disproven in this election. His read of the situation was disproven.
Yeah. But as I am famously quoted as saying, reality has a right-wing bias.
It does. No, it does.
Yeah, Colbert. All right, anyway, that was his big thing. Do you remember when Colbert did that?
I haven't watched Stephen Colbert probably since 2007.
Like 10 years ago, his oft-repeated quote was, reality has a liberal bias. That's right. Well, that's no longer true, for those that didn't know the reference. All right. Particle Ghost says, who had the murder of an innocent squirrel as their prediction for the late October surprise? Hey, look, man, I really do think that story probably mobilized a couple of voters at least.
Yeah.
They were like, whoa, this is like a Democrat government went in and killed somebody's squirrel.
And it's not even just that. I think part of the reason it resonated with the right so much is it is the perfect encapsulation of how petty bureaucracy just seems out to suck all of the joy out of everything good in life.
Can I tell you something, though? I was already solid on voting for Trump. I bought new cushions for my outside chairs last year, and they were very, very expensive. Outdoor furniture is very expensive. I paid probably like $1,000 for a cushion. Serious, I don't know what we paid, but it was a crazy.
We're getting to squirrel slander, aren't we?
Oh, it ain't slander. It is facts, Jack. I get this. I say, finally, I've got this nice cushion that I had to sell a kidney to buy, and then days later, some nasty little squirrel. It wasn't Peanut, but it was one who looked like him. I don't want to cast aspersions on a whole group of animals.
Yeah.
He ripped through my expensive cushion, totally irreparable. It's hard for me to lose sleep over Peanut.
Oh, man. Well, I'll say this. I think that what really happened was after they're eating dogs, they're eating cats comment, Trump won the dog vote, and Kamala Harris was very concerned about this. So to try to get dogs on her side, she assassinated a squirrel.
Yeah. Yep.
Their leader, 2 million followers. All right, everybody, if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, share the show with everyone you know. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast, but more importantly, you go to timcast.com, you click sign up or join us, you become a member, and I'll tell you why. Every day I hear from people, we hear it in the chat, saying, how do I get involved? And actually, this is kind of a funny aside. Some people tell me they got married from being in our Discord server. Yeah, not kidding at all. Like they're like, I met someone and I got married. I'm not suggesting that will happen to you. You will make friends. And every day the members of Discord ask me to please shout it out because they've built a massive community. There's pre-shows, there's morning shows, there's a morning commute show. You join the Discord server, you're driving in your car, and they have their own show outside of my show. It's incredible. But as a member, not only are you a part of this community, but you are supporting our work and making this show possible. So I am eternally grateful. And that is the most important thing. I say the founding fathers met in pubs and bars where they shared their ideas, and this led to the birth of the greatest nation this planet has ever seen. And so at the very least, we want to create a space for you guys to share your ideas, and hopefully that will continue this great tradition.
You know, this is a related story. I heard a lot of people got gay married in David Pakman's Discord server. I don't know if that's verified yet. But just to bring it full circle.
I think they got sex changes in the Discord.
David should launch one. But thank you all so much for being members. Michael, do you want to shout anything out?
I do, and I'll be very careful in my wording. I'm just enjoying this wonderful week with a celebratory Mayflower cigar. So that's all I'm going to say. That's just what I'm doing. You can also watch my show at the Michael Knowles Show if you like. And, you can celebrate if you want to celebrate, but not in any specific way.
Are you on X?
I am on X at Michael J. Knowles, KNWLES. There's been some confusion over my account because a certain doppelganger that I have was crying during the election results, and I think they didn't know who it was, but it's the sort of person, like with the Subarus and the Greek island and everything, but that's not me. I am Michael J. Knowles on X.
My rule was, if you are filmed crying on camera after an election, you don't get to vote anymore. But however, people were like, Tim, and they pointed out a handful of people that we know and are friends with who cried with joy, and I said, no! I don't care if you're happy or sad. You film yourself crying on camera.
That's harsh, but it's fair. It's equal treatment under the law.
Right. That's right. Elaad, do you want to shout anything out?
My name's Elaad Eliyahu. I'm a journalist here at Timcast. This was one of my favorite episodes in a while. It might have been because I'm still on a high from election night. It could have been some of these wonderful, delicious Mayflower cigars that Michael Knowles was nice enough to give me. And obviously, it was great to have the thoughtful and wise Knowles on tonight. Thank you for being here.
Stop it. Get out of here. Come on. Pleasure
What's up, Seamus?
I had a great time tonight as well. It was an absolute blast. The thing I would like to shout out is Freedom Tunes. We make cartoons. We post at least one a week, sometimes 2 a week. And guess what? This week, we have posted one every single day. We're also planning on posting a cartoon tomorrow. So I want you guys to go over to youtube.com/freedomtunes. I want you to subscribe. We recently broke 1 million. I want to thank you all for that. We're at about 1,015,000 at this point. Thank you guys. God bless you.
Seamus, the squirrel one I think is really your best video.
Tim loves it. If you could,
It's so good. It's so good.
Thank you.
The animation of the squirrel, like with the bullet coming, and then Trump's like got magic powers, and then the crystals. It's just very.
Thank you. Well, I really hope you guys love it. And if you want to help us to continue to make cartoons, if you want to help us to continue to promote a good message using animation that is genuinely funny and that people enjoy, go over to freedomtunes.com. Get yourself a membership over there. You'll get to watch the behind the scenes podcast where we talk about the creation of the cartoon, and you will also be supporting us in what we do. And there are very many behind the paywall cartoons that only members get to watch, which you'll get to check out over there.
I am Phil That Remains on Twix. I am Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. And tonight, about an hour ago, we debuted a new video for a song called Forever Cold. You can get the link at the top of my X page. Like I said, I am Phil That Remains on Twix. You can also go to the YouTube page. That's where you're going to see it. It is youtube.com/all that remains. You can check out Forever Cold. You can check out 3 other new ones that have come out this year. One's called Divine, one called Let You Go, and No Tomorrow. So brand new All That Remains tonight. It's available. You can go check it out right now. And you can follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, Deezer, and don't forget, the left lane is for crime.
And I just
no going the speed limit in the left lane, 65 and up.
And I just want to give a shout out to Phil, because we had people chatting. They were like, Phil, don't you know the name of your own song? Because you're always like, what was the other song? And it's because Phil is trying not to shout out the songs he hasn't released yet.
Yeah, we have 6 new songs that have not come out yet. So I want to make sure I don't slip and do any kind of pre stuff. So.
All right. Well, Michael, it's been a blast. Thank you to everybody who's hanging out tomorrow. We're back at youtube.com/Timcast. It's a different channel. Go subscribe, because we're going to be hanging out with General Flynn and a few others. And I have questions about Trump's revenge. It'll be fun. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see y'all then.